good evening and welcome to this November 17th night version of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. Tonight, we're going to be having our annual Truth Act Community Forum regarding immigration and customs enforcement access to individuals during the 2019 year. This is something that's required under state law. And I would note for the record that we have one group presentation and 113 individual speakers on this item. But in order to get started, let me ask the clerk if he would please call the roll.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. Supervisor Jacob? Supervisor
Here.
Gaspar?
Here. Jacob here.
Thank you. Supervisor Gaspar?
Present.
Supervisor Fletcher? I see Supervisor Fletcher in the Zoom. Vice Chairman Desmond?
Thank you. Fletcher here.
Great. Vice Chairman Desmond?
Here.
And Chairman Cox?
Here. Again, we welcome everyone to this meeting. As I mentioned, we do have a number of speakers and we will have a group presentation. But in order to get started with this, we provide an opportunity for our sheriff to give his report, and then we will get into the group presentation, which will allow 10 minutes for. For the individual speakers, we're going to have to, just by the sheer numbers, limit you to 2 minutes each. Let me ask if our Chief Administrative Officer has any introductory comments, and if not, then we'll go directly to the sheriff.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I have no introductory comments, so you can go ahead and go to the sheriff. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Andrew. Before the sheriff begins his comments, for members of the public that have requested to speak on this item, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. You will be muted until it is your turn to speak. Thank you.
Okay, Sheriff Gore, it's all yours.
Good evening, Chairman Cox and members of the board. This year marks the third Truth Act Community Forum for San Diego County. As stewards of the law, San Diego County Sheriff's Department works hard each and every day to not only protect and maintain public safety, but work on establishing trust with those we serve. A core value of the Sheriff's Department is diversity, specifically the ability to embrace and strengthen the diversity of our employees and our communities. Just as we value the life experiences of our employees bring to the department, we recognize the diverse qualities our communities bring to our region, including the valuable contributions our immigrant and refugee members add to the rich fabric of our region. In 2017, the transparent review of unjust transfer and holds, or what we call the Truth Act, went into effect, requiring local law enforcement agencies prior to an interview between the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, and an individual in custody regarding civil immigration violations to do these things. One, provide the individual a written consent form that would explain, among other things, the purpose of the interview that is voluntary and that the individual may decline to be interviewed. Two, require the consent form to be available in specified languages, English, Spanish, Chinese, Tagalog, Vietnamese, and Korean. And three, require a local law enforcement agency to provide copies of the documentation received from ICE to the individual and to notify the individual regarding the intent of the agency to comply with ICE requests. Separate from the Truth Act, but yet aligned in intent, is Senate Bill 54, the California Values Act, which states that local and state law enforcement authorities may not use resources, including personnel or facilities, to investigate or arrest people for federal immigration enforcement purposes. In essence, these legislative changes mandate policies prohibiting state and local law enforcement agencies from using resources to investigate, interrogate, detain, detect, or arrest people for immigration enforcement purposes. Since the enactment of the Truth Act and the California Values Act, the Sheriff's Department has remained committed to developing and maintaining collaborative relationships with all stakeholders in an effort to build and strengthen public trust and ensure public safety. The Sheriff's Department remains vigilant in educating our staff on changes in department policies and standards as it relates to immigration laws. These policies include section 6.47 entitled Immigration Law Enforcement, restricting agency resources and personnel from collaborating in immigration enforcement, as well as a policy and procedure section Q4, verification of legal status conformance to immigration laws. This policy directs that no individual in custody will be delayed in the release process. All of our policies and procedures are available to the public on our public website. As a department, we have continued the use of internal forms and the automated data collection for the purposes of statistical reporting requirements to the California Department of Justice and local advocacy groups. I would like to now introduce our Detentions Processing Division Assistant Manager, Liliana Martinez Fuentes, who will be presenting the information on data that has been maintained in relation to the Truth Act.
Good evening. Before we proceed with reporting on data associated with the Truth Act, I would like to provide information to the community on the Sheriff's Detention Services Bureau's protocols as it relates to ICE. Outside law enforcement agencies, including Immigration and Customs Enforcement or ICE agents, do not have free access to sheriff's facilities or jails. ICE is required to check in via the primary entrance point and follow professional visitor guidelines. This approach, in consultation with the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium, allows the department to monitor and track ICE's access. If ICE would like to receive information on an individual or conduct an interview, the request forms, as indicated on this slide, are submitted to the Jail Population Management Unit for review and compliance with state law. The Sheriff's Department will not transfer an individual to immigration authorities unless authorized by a judicial warrant or based upon a qualifying conviction or charge pursuant to Senate Bill 54. In 2019, our Jail Population Management Unit received a total of 1,536 ICE release notification requests. Of this amount, 1,086 requests were rejected as a result of an inmate not meeting the necessary criteria under Senate Bill 54. However, 450 individuals were determined to have SB 54 qualifying charges, convictions, or criminal history. Therefore, the request was accepted. Some examples of the qualifying convictions and charges include previous convictions per section 667.5 and 1192.7 of the California Penal Code. Assault, battery, sexual abuse, exploitation, child abuse, endangerment. We received a total of 120 ICE interview requests. This resulted in the following outcomes. Agreed to an interview with an attorney present, 20 times. Declined an interview, 65 times. Agreed to an interview without an attorney present, 35 times. As a reminder, interview request forms are offered in 6 languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, Tagalog, Vietnamese, and Korean. Should an inmate be unable to read, or if the forms are not provided in their language, we make every effort to use certified translators or AT&T interpreter services that can provide this information to them in their preferred language. In 2019, a total of 80,003 inmates were released from sheriff's custody. Of this amount, 271 inmates were authorized to be released to ICE. Some of the crime categories include serious or violent offenses, such as assault with a deadly weapon, robbery, sexual abuse, exploitation. These releases take place in the detention facility for a safe transfer. While there were a total of 450 release notification requests that were screened and determined to have met the criteria, not all qualified individuals were picked up by ICE. Some of these individuals may have been transferred to another county, state, prison, or were still in our custody at the end of 2019, waiting to be adjudicated on local matters. The Sheriff's Department continually evaluates its processes with adhering to this fairly new law and how it relates to our service delivery. An example of an outcome of our service delivery review process is that of language translations for the ICE interview consent forms. We identified the opportunity of integrating Arabic as one of the available languages for the ICE interview consent form, given the demographic breakdown of individuals who may benefit from such translation services. It should be reminded that individuals in custody have always been given the ability to request for language translation if desired. However, given our region's role in refugee newcomer services in San Diego, we determined the addition of an Arabic form will bridge possible needs by individuals who self-report as being Middle Eastern moving forward. I would like to now turn it back to Sheriff Gore in regards to the Sheriff's Department open data and outreach efforts.
Thanks, Lily. I recognize that matters pertaining to immigration enforcement are important to our community. That is why the Sheriff's Department wants to ensure everyone has access to information and resources. Throughout the years, the Sheriff's Department has been working with a dedicated group at the San Diego Immigration Rights Consortium. They have been providing guidance and recommendations for policy changes, many of which have been adopted into our policies. As part of these dialogues, we recognize the importance of transparency. That is why we have developed custom reports derived from areas of interest to the SDIRC to now be hosted publicly on our website for the general public's information. The Sheriff's website hosts archives of resources pertaining to the Truth Act, as well as SB 54 Values Act information, such as ICE interview request data from 2017, 18, and 19, SB 54 Values Act transfer report, number of transfers per offense code for 2018 and 2019, and the SB 54 Values Act report to the California Attorney General, and past Truth Act forum presentations. In regards to the pending release report hosted on the Sheriff's Department website, we recognize that this has been an area of concern for our immigrant rights community members. Rather than identify a new approach done solely by Sheriff's personnel, I will have my staff meet with their contacts at the SDIRC to form a working group and to identify an approach that will hopefully work for all parties by the start of 2021. I recognize that establishing community trust is paramount when it comes to community policing and the ability to drive crime rates down. I also know it's going to take purposeful steps to get there when it comes to immigrant communities. This slide illustrates the way we go about outreach efforts, as well as a sample of resources we have put together in English and Spanish to ensure all residents feel safe to report crime. A key component that helps us strengthen ties with our communities, the various refugee and immigrant services-based organizations who not only partner with us on community public safety presentations, but serve as a conduit for community members to go to when they feel at risk or not sure how to report crimes. I'd like to take this opportunity to truly thank those organizations for their partnership and dedication to our newcomers and residents. Even though the Truth Act Forum takes place once a year, this does not mean this topic is limited to this venue. Throughout the year, we engage in various stakeholder groups and community meetings. Our partnership with these groups is not just to demonstrate our commitment to the community, but also to have ongoing dialogue on matters of interest. Mr. Chairman, this concludes our presentation, subject to your questions.
Okay, let me start off by asking my colleagues if they have any questions for the sheriff at this time. Seeing none, we'll go directly into the public comment. I would note that we do have one group presentation, and as I mentioned, we have 113 individual comments. So we will start off with the group presentation. We'll ask the clerk to set the clock for 10 minutes. There has to be at least 3 speakers under our rules of procedures, and you need to kind of self-monitor in regards to the allocation of that 10-minute time period. Will then be followed by the individual speakers, 113 in number. We do ask you to please keep your comments within 2 minutes and to try not to be repetitive of other speakers. Mr. Clerk, why don't you go ahead and call the group presentation up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also note for the record that we received 78 e-comments on this item. And for the benefit of all the callers that are on the line, we will be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted, and then you will need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each caller will be asked to state your name for the audio record. And as the chairman indicated, we'll begin with the group presentation in which we will unmute all the members of the group. When you hear this sound, that means your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. And I'd remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking.
Buenas noches. Identificaremos a los llamadores por los últimos 4 dígitos de su número de teléfono. Escuchará una notificación de que su llamada ya no se encuentra en silencio. Luego deberá presionar *6 para activar su teléfono. A cada persona que llame se le pedirá que indique su nombre para el registro. Tendrá un total de 2 minutos para dirigirse a la Junta. Escuchará este sonido cuando se acabe el tiempo. Por favor, concluya sus comentarios en ese momento. Quisiera recordarles a los que llamen que deben silenciar su televisión o transmisión de video en vivo antes de comenzar a hablar. Gracias.
So we'll begin with our group presentation. I'll unmute all 4 members of the group at once, and then if you can each introduce yourselves, and then you'll have 10 minutes total. You can self-regulate your time, and if you can just say next slide when you'd like us to go on to the next slide, we'll advance the slides for you. So we'll begin with 7277, 6917, 8780, and 5357. You all need to press *6 to unmute yourselves, and then you can begin whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. So we will get started. My name is Lilian Serrano, and I'm today addressing you as representative for Alianza Comunitaria and also as chair for the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium. If we can go to the next slide, please. I'm just already brief. Sorry, I'm having difficulty with the live feed. Really briefly, for those of you who might not be familiar with our coalition, we are a coalition of over 50 organizations all throughout San Diego County. We come together to advance immigrant rights in our region. As Sheriff Gore has mentioned, ensuring that there is policies to build trust between law enforcement and our communities in San Diego has been a priority for the consortium for quite a few years now. We have been meeting with Sheriff Gore and staff for a few years, bringing up concerns and things we have been seeing in our community. Today, we're addressing the county board, and you might see that there are some demands that are very repetitive from the past 3 years. These are demands that have been presented to the sheriff multiple times and unfortunately have not been addressed. So I will actually give the floor to my colleagues to go in detail into those demands. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. Good evening. My name is Monica Langarica. I'm here on behalf of the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium. And I'd like to thank all of you in attendance, in particular, community who have made time to be here today. Next slide, please. Sorry, I can't tell from the live feed whether the slide has changed.
We're at the concern number 1, inmates pending release report slide.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to start by addressing the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium's first concern here, which is the San Diego Sheriff's Office's use of the so-called inmates pending release report. After the passage of SB 54, the San Diego Sheriff's Office started its practice of publishing a daily list of people pending release from San Diego County jails. Next slide, please. I can't see, but there should be an image on the screen right now. And if you could just confirm that there's an image of a screenshot.
It's the inmates pending release report. If you're watching on the Zoom meeting, it's on the same speed. That's the live stream. If you're watching on another, like on channel 24, or that would be delayed. So you're 45 seconds behind. So you would want to watch on the Zoom feed itself if you can.
Okay, so the practice of publishing the daily list of people pending release looks like the image on your screen right now, only it is without the redactions that we have added out of respect to people's privacy. Next slide, please. The San Diego Sheriff's Office started this new practice of publicly posting a list of people who are pending release from any San Diego County jail on a daily basis. And the San Diego County Sheriff's Office started this practice explicitly as a workaround to SB 54, with which the office has continually and publicly expressed its discontent. SB 54 was passed in 2018 and prohibits the San Diego Sheriff's Office from transferring certain people to ICE custody and from notifying ICE of certain people's release dates. The Inmate Pending Release Report completely facilitates ICE's ability to identify when and where a person from our community is being released from a county jail, regardless of whether the San Diego Sheriff's Office lawfully complied with the transfer and notification request, and importantly, regardless of whether that person is covered by the protections against transfers and notifications under SB 54. This practice of publicly posting release dates invites profiling, and it creates serious privacy concerns. The report ultimately leads to unofficial transfers to ICE that happen in jail parking lots and without oversight, as community members across our county have witnessed and documented. I'd like to remind this body and the community that in passing SB 54, the legislature of California declared immigrants are valuable and essential members of the California community. A relationship of trust between California's immigrant community and state and local agencies is central to the public safety of the people of California. And this trust is threatened when state and local agencies are entangled with federal immigration enforcement. The San Diego Sheriff's Office use of this report betrays the will of the people and the legislature of California. And it is wholly unnecessary and duplicative, as the San Diego Sheriff's Office Who's in Jail search tool remains functional on its website. Next slide, please. Our coalition made the demand that San Diego Sheriff's Office stop publishing this list last year. We were here 1 year ago, bringing this to the attention of community and demanding that this stop, and the sheriff has ignored it. We repeat the demand, and we urge the San Diego Sheriff's Office to respect the will of the legislature and of the people in California in limiting its collaboration with ICE. Next slide, please. And this slide should say ICE access to county jails. You could just confirm.
It does, yes.
Thank you. The San Diego County Sheriff's Office, in addition to publicly posting release dates in this manner, the San Diego County Sheriff's Office continues to allow ICE to interview individuals in its custody, even though the Sheriff's Office is not required to allow ICE access to its jails. Next slide, please. The San Diego County Sheriff's Office's revised protocols that the office referenced a second ago, which now require ICE to sign in anytime they want to interview an individual at a county jail, have reduced the number of people ICE accesses in county jails. But the fact that the San Diego County Sheriff's Office continues to allow these interviews to happen, and the fact that it chooses to allow ICE to access people inside of its own jails, despite that kind of collaboration being completely, wholly, and totally voluntary, means that the San Diego County Sheriff's Office continues to undermine community trust. And it means that San Diego County continues using local resources to facilitate ICE's detention and deportation machine. So thank you all again. I'll pass it over to my colleague, Adriana Jasso from the American Friends Service Committee.
For the benefit of the group, you have 3 minutes and 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you very much. My name is Adriana Jasso, and I work for the Office of the American Friends Service Committee. I'm going to be addressing from slide 10 to about slide 17 for the interest of time. If you want to take us to slide 10, that would be greatly appreciated. And just to give a little bit of context, our office made an official inquiry to the agency of the sheriff when during the summer of this year, when civil arrest also came to San Diego, we were able to document the presence of Border Patrol agents at the county administration office building, as well as a couple of locations during community protests in Santee and the area of El Cajon. through our conversation in writing with the Office of the Sheriff, we became formally, were able to confirm that in fact, the Sheriff's Office had made formal request to Border Patrol, to the Department of Homeland Security for extra support. When we speak of trust, as both Lily and Monica pointed out, this became of great concern, intimidated members of our community. We got requests in writing and also phone calls asking to ask on their behalf to the agency as to why the need for these additional resources took place. For us, it's important to bring it up to this to the body of that is meeting tonight. Although we're evaluating the data and information provided by Sheriff Gore from 2019, which is the purpose of the Truth Act Forum, we feel that it is important to give voice to members of the community that felt intimidated when Border Patrol suddenly became part of the presence of a formal agency when protest and participation is protected under the Constitution of this country. So this is coming from the community concern. We hope that this is kept in mind and that hopefully the next time agencies won't take the step of sending a message of mistrust if we're having a conversation about trust. If we can go to slide 13, which is we're already coming to the difficulty of time. The other demand that we have that relates to the conversation or the delineation of the demands from Monica is the end to transfers. We are also going through a world crisis in terms of the implications that transferring people from county custody into ICE, as we know, and we probably won't forget that at one point the Otay detention facility had the highest number of cases of COVID-19. So again, we hope that transfers come to an end and that Sheriff Gore has the power to do that. And let's begin a new year with the end to transfers. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes your time. We'll now move on to the individual speakers.
Thank you. Our first individual speaker is 2953. 2953.
2953.
And you'll need to press *6 to unmute yourself.
Deberá oprimir asterisco 6 para quitar el silencio.
Two nine five three.
2953.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Alex, and I'm a volunteer with Sunrise Movement. With the coronavirus cases spiking across the entire country, it's reckless to be moving and transferring individuals between facilities. The Otay Mesa Detention Center is noted to have the highest rates of coronavirus in detention centers in the country. What good does it do to separate families and deport people? It inflicts psychological stress to the families, brings pain to the community, and sows even more distrust with our government agencies. Every person on this planet is a human being. They're someone else's parent, child, sibling, or friend. And if you knew this person, you would fight tooth and nail to keep them safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next caller is 5288.
5288.
5288.
5288.
And 5288.
5288.
You need to press *6 to unmute yourself.
oprima el asterisco 6 para poder hablar.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Good evening, all. My name is Rebecca Bewley, and I'm here to encourage you to immediately stop all official and unofficial ICE transfers. Personally, I have always felt comfortable calling the police, and I believe that every person should feel as comfortable as I do calling the police in a crisis situation. Yet, some may be hesitant if they or the person that needs police help are undocumented. Immigration status should not come in between public and personal safety. Given the current climate surrounding public trust of police, it is especially important that all members of the community feel comfortable asking for help. This is especially true during COVID, in which there are likely many delays and hiccups with immigration documents. Please increase trust in the police by stopping all ICE transfers and the use of county resources to separate families. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 0873.
0873.
0873.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. So my name is Vinton. I live in La Mesa, and I am a member of the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. The Sheriff's Department really needs to stop their collaboration with ICE. ICE is a violator of human rights. ICE is violating our own constitutional rights, and the county should not be collaborating with them, and that violates also our state laws. So please, 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 the sheriff needs to stop this. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4310.
4310.
4310.
Hello?
Hello? You may proceed.
Me?
Yes, 4310.
Okay. Yes, hi. My name is Emily Green. I am a member of Jewish Action San Diego, and I am calling in to comment that ICE has a history of horrific abuses against people in detention. Voluntarily and unofficially working with ICE is complicit in those actions against people and human rights abuses at the detention center. I'm also very concerned about COVID cases rising, and we know that transfers result in higher instances of COVID. And we also know that trust in the community with policing is very important, especially with women and children being affected by domestic abuse. People cannot trust the police or the sheriff's department in order to come to their assistance without immigration getting in the way, then that puts women and children in danger. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7785.
7785.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Nicole, and I am a constituent in District 3. I'm calling upon the County Board of Supervisors to immediately stop ICE transfers and stop using county resources to aid in the separation of families and deportation of community members. Under the Truth Act, any law enforcement agency that provides ICE access to an individual must hold a community forum. But while San Diego takes steps to fully implement this, the San Diego Sheriff's Department continues to undermine the law, putting public safety at risk. Last year, the community raised concerns about the sheriff circumventing SB 54 by posting a list of individuals pending release on their website and working with federal immigration officials on joint task forces that lack transparency and accountability. As long as the San Diego Sheriff's Department continues to transfer individuals to ICE and collaborate with DHS agencies, the County of San Diego is complicit in the separation of families and deportation of our community members. The County Board of Supervisors must act by immediately stopping ICE transfers. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4082.
4082.
4082.
Hi, my name is Seska. I am from District 3. I strongly oppose the collaboration between ICE and the police. There have been reports from credible sources such as Democracy Now! That has done investigative work about the continued medical neglect of people in Otay Mesa Detention Center. The people who are transferred are not quarantined when they arrive, and folks are not given face masks or any protections from the pandemic. People still have to pay for essential items like soap during a pandemic. So these transfers must stop. There are more and more people that are dying under police and detention center custody due to the neglect and complete disregard for human lives. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5187.
5187.
5187.
Hi, good evening, Supervisors. My name is Chris Olson, Director of Public Policy and External Affairs for Jewish Family Service of San Diego. JFS is proud to be a core partner of the San Diego Rapid Response Network. I want to thank you for holding this important hearing in the evening so more people can participate. I want to just say on behalf of JFS that everyone in our community is less safe when community members are transferred to ICE. The fear of ICE transfers makes people less likely to call local law enforcement when they're in need. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, policies that aid or lead to individuals being detained at a facility where the virus continues to spread are negligent and dangerous. We urge the county to stop using local resources to aid in the separation of families. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8408. 8408.
8408.
Hello, hi, my name is Chelsea. I'm a resident of District 4. I think SDIRC has made it quite plain. We know that Sheriff Gore does not care about immigrants. He does not care about the people who are in his care in his jails. So simply, like, SDRC has made it plain, if the San Diego County continues to allow the sheriff to transfer individuals to ICE and to collaborate with DHS by giving them access to the jails, that this county is being complicit in the separation of families. Like, that is generational trauma that you elected are complicit. So SDRC has made it plain about what this county needs to do to ensure that we truly value the families that are here regardless of their immigration status. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 4439.
4439.
4439.
Hello, my name is Andrew. I'm La Jolla, District 4, with Surge, showing up for racial justice here in San Diego. I just want to echo and kind of pause to ask the representatives, we've heard these demands from SDIRC 3 years in a row now. What is it going to take to act? What is it going to take to stop being complicit in this horrible pattern? What is it going to take to end these partnerships? I think we all know that Sheriff Gore and the County Sheriff's Department are playing games using a loophole. We all know that's endangering our community members, and we all know that's undermining public trust in law enforcement at the same time. So I call on you to act and to act with commitment and courage to end this terrible pattern that is harming our community in many different ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 3483.
3483.
3483.
3483.
Hi, this is Nika Chinnerat with PANA, and I wanted to say that San Diego Sheriff's Department is making everybody less safe by transferring community members to ICE. Community members are less likely to call our local law enforcement if they feel they or a loved one might end up being transferred to ICE or our county sheriff. And on top of that, during a COVID pandemic, the Otay Mesa Detention Facility has had the highest numbers of COVID-19 cases in the county. Transferring individuals to be detained at a facility where COVID-19 continues to spread is negligent and downright dangerous, and increases the ability of the virus to spread So we're calling upon the County Board of Supervisors to immediately stop ICE transfers and to stop using county resources to aid in the separation of families and deportation of community members. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9239.
9239.
9239.
9239.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dory. I'm a member with the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. I am calling, along with all of these other people, to demand that the Sheriff's Department and all public departments stop collaborating with ICE. The Sheriff claimed in his presentation that he works for the protection of the public and supports immigrant communities, but the department working alongside ICE shows that those claims are lies. ICE has long lost the trust of the public through their violent, abusive, and unconstitutional practices. And the sheriff knows this. The fact that the sheriff is allowing ICE access to jails and all of these other things is a demonstration in hypocrisy. So as a resident of San Diego, I am demanding that the Sheriff Department and other public departments not share information, resources, or public facilities with ICE. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 6917.
6917.
6917.
6917.
Hello, my name is Erin Termoto-Grassi, and I work as a Human Rights Policy Advisor for Alliance San Diego. First, I want to take a moment to recognize the Sheriff and Probation's willingness to be here tonight to provide transparency to our communities, as well as their willingness to meet with community organizations. These are important steps towards building community trust, and we do appreciate that. However, it's important to recognize that transparency without accountability is not enough. While we have seen some important changes made by the Sheriff's Office, including updating their written policy to be fully in compliance with SB 54 and providing community with more information about the individuals who are being transferred to ICE, the fact remains that the Sheriff's Department is still utilizing county resources to aid in the deportation of our community members. And that is a huge problem. My colleagues already outlined the various ways that the Sheriff continues to facilitate the deportation of our community members to ICE. So I won't go into any further detail there. But I do want to point out that these are not new concerns. We brought this before the Board of Supervisors last year, and the board failed to act. Now we are in the middle of a pandemic, and the stakes are even higher. Facilitating the transfer of individuals to ICE, whether officially or non-officially by posting on the inmates pending release report online, means that the county is furthering the spread of COVID-19 and endangering the lives of everyone in our community. It's time for this to stop. We are calling upon the Board of Supervisors to act and stop the sheriff from transferring individuals to ICE. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8579.
8579.
8579.
8579.
And if we don't hear from you, we will come back to you.
Si no lo escuchamos, regresamos con usted.
Our next caller is 8772.
8772.
8772.
8772.
Hello, my name is Pebbles. I represent Asian Solidarity Collective. As we all know, the law enforcement agencies have an obligation to make sure all people in our communities feel safe, regardless of their immigration status. We must hold the law enforcement agencies and the San Diego Department accountable to the citizens they protect and serve, and the non-safety protocols of transferring folks to ICE. This instills fear in immigrant communities and leaves the most vulnerable members unprotected. This leads community members to lose trust in our local law enforcement. During this COVID-19 pandemic, the Otay Mesa Detention Facility had some of the highest rates of COVID-19 cases in the country. Why is that? By transferring individuals to be detained at a facility where COVID-19 continues to spread is absolutely dangerous and harmful, for it will increase the ability of virus to spread. Today, we call upon our County Board of Supervisors, from elders to youth and the community members. We demand to stop the deportation.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4373.
4373.
4373.
4373.
If not, again, we will come back to these callers. The next caller is 9454.
9454. 9454.
Yes, hello. This is Nadine Tapazada. I'm the Director of Refugee and Immigrant Services for Catholic Charities, both in San Diego and Imperial County. Law enforcement agencies have always had the obligation of making sure that immigrants, refugees, and newcomers in general in San Diego feel safe, regardless of their immigration status. I think it's everybody's knowledge that we have had incidents in the past that have affected refugees, immigrants, undocumented individuals, and the San Diego Sheriff Department is leaving some of our most vulnerable and marginalized defend for themselves because of their fear of being transferred to ICE custody, either them or family members. Not to mention what my colleagues shared earlier, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. Otay Mesa is basically off limits for a lot of our attorneys who normally go down there to represent individuals because there are outbreaks in multiple pods. So it's imperative to separate the Sheriff Department's activity from ICE, not only in the community, but also in courthouses. The Immigration and Nationality Act is designed to ensure that courts are open, accessible, and free from interruption. And any other practice that DHS conducts in terms of arrests in the San Diego Federal Courthouse deters parties to a case, witnesses from coming to court, and basically adversely affects the administration of justice. So on behalf of Catholic Charities, I am urging movement forward and a forward momentum and separating the activities of the San Diego Sheriff Department from ICE. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 0950.
0950.
0950.
0950.
And
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Karen Gobedarov.
Buenas tardes. ¿Dijo que su nombre es Karen Maldonado?
Gobedarov.
Ok. Adelante.
Ok, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Karen Gobedarov. Soy miembro activa de ACE, Californianos Unidos, y estoy aquí para pedirle a todas las leyes municipales y al board de administradores que por favor detengan ahorita todas las redadas que tienen del ICE, especialmente ahorita en esta pandemia y durante esta pandemia, cuando necesitamos que la comunidad esté más unida, que las personas seamos vistas como personas, no por raza, no por religión, para podernos atender a la crisis que en este país estamos viviendo. Yo como viuda y residente de California, de ciudadano americano, pido mucha ayuda a ellos, que por favor detengan todo esto para que las familias podamos estar unidas y no separadas. Muchas gracias.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Gobernado. I'm a member of ACE, and I ask that during this time, all the administrators and county executives stop the ICE raids, especially during the pandemic, when it's a time for communities to be united and seen as people and not by in different groups. And it's a time of crisis, and I personally am a widow of a U.S. citizen, and this is a time to be looking at people as people and not by something else that identifies them. Thank you.
thank you. Our next caller is 0893.
0893.
0893.
0893.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yasmin Abed. I serve as the Advocacy and Campaigns Coordinator with the Majdal Center in El Cajon. I also serve as an advisory board member for Borderlands for Equity and the Community Partnerships Chair for the SF. And I'm here today to ask the Sheriff's Department to end its collaboration with ICE on all different levels. ICE should never even exist in the first place because it's literally destroying our families, separating our children, and terrorizing our communities.
And the fact that we even have this partnership is incredibly harmful for our communities. And we ask and demand the Sheriff's Department to end this collaboration with ICE and to specifically stop moving folks to different detention centers during these horrific times where they're expanding the spread of COVID in times where we're supposed to not even be going outside our houses. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9856.
9856.
9856.
9856.
Hello. Is this time?
Yes, you may proceed.
Should I go ahead?
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
My name is Ann Elliott, and I'm a resident of San Diego, Nathan Fletcher's district. I'm listening to everybody, and one of the primary concerns, as it has been for the last few years, is the inmate pending release report, which the sheriff's own policy violates. The policy that they presented earlier under jails says the sheriff's department will not provide information regarding an individual's release date. But I think that we shouldn't just be talking about the sheriff. I think we should also be talking about the Board of Supervisors, because apparently after the last year's Truth Act forum, the Board of Supervisors voted to support President Trump's lawsuit against SB 54. And that, of course, was defeated. So perhaps it's time for the Board of Supervisors to put some pressure on the sheriff, because after all, the sheriff works for the people, and the people elected the Board of Supervisors as well as the sheriff. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Our next caller is 5908.
5908.
5908.
5908.
Hello, my name is Pedro Rios, and I'm director of the U.S.-Mexico Border Program of the American Friends Service Committee. And since 2003, when ICE was created under the Department of Homeland Security, we've documented countless cases of egregious actions of abusive practices by ICE. These are human rights violations that take place in San Diego County. It is unconscionable, therefore, that the Sheriff's Department continues to violate the spirit of SB 54 by publishing information online about those being released with the intention of allowing ICE to access this information. Because ICE on a daily basis commits egregious human rights violations, the county should not be using resources to be complicit with these actions and these abusive practices. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 0111.
0111.
0111.
0111.
And again, if we don't hear from you when your number is called, we will come back to you.
De nuevo, si no lo escuchamos cuando nombramos un número, regresaremos con usted.
Bueno, ¿sí me escuchan?
Ah, no, sí, claro, adelante.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es José López, soy organizador con ACE y residente del Distrito 1 de San Diego.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Lopez. I'm an organizer with ACE and a resident of District 1, San Diego.
Estoy llamando a la Junta de Supervisores del Condado para exigir que el Departamento del Sheriff deje de publicar los prisioneros con salida pendiente en el sitio web del Sheriff.
I am calling the Board of Supervisors today to demand that the sheriff stop publishing the inmates pending release report on their website.
Que dejen de dar acceso a ICE a las cárceles.
That you stop allowing ICE access to the jail.
Que dejen de compartir recursos con DHS.
That you stop sharing resources with the Department of Homeland Security.
Y que pongan un alto a los traslados a ICE.
And that you stop the transfers to ICE.
Es la obligación de las agencias policíacas asegurar que las personas de nuestra comunidad se sienten seguros sin importar su estado migratorio.
It's the obligation of a police or law enforcement forces within our communities to make sure that people feel safe, and they are safe without disregarding their current, immigrant status.
El departamento del sheriff de San Diego está haciendo a las personas menos seguras, trasladando a las personas de nuestra comunidad a ICE.
The Sheriff's Department of San Diego is making people less safe when they transfer them to ICE.
Los miembros de nuestra comunidad van a ser menos probables para marcarle a la policía si saben que la policía está trabajando con las autoridades de inmigración.
Our community members will be less likely to call the police if they know that they are working with the immigration authorities.
En lo que el departamento de sheriff sigue trasladando a las personas de ICE y colaborando con las agencias de DHS, el condado de San Diego está ayudando a separar las familias y deportar a miembros de nuestra comunidad.
Because the sheriff continues if the sheriff continues to transfer inmates to ICE and collaborate with DHS, then the county is participating in the separation of families and hurting our communities.
Por último, quiero pedir que para la próxima vez haya un foro que no nomás sea en inglés. Es muy importante que esta información se entienda por personas que no hablan inglés, que son las personas que ocupan la información más que los demás.
Lastly, I would like to ask that the next time you have this Truth Act form, that it be in multiple languages, since this information is very important to people that speak other languages and it's necessary for them to receive it.
Gracias, espero que pueda contar con su apoyo, no como el año pasado, cuando decidieron unirse con la administración de Trump para hacerlo completamente opuesto de lo que estaba pidiendo la comunidad.
Thank you. I hope that I can count on your support, not like last year where you decided to support the Trump administration and do exactly the opposite of what the community was asking you to do.
Y quiero decirle adiós a los supervisores que ya no van a estar con nosotros durante el próximo año.
And I want to say goodbye to the supervisors that will not be with us next year.
Espero que se la pasen bien y que ya nunca tengamos que trabajar con ustedes.
I hope that you are well and that we never have to work with you again.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 6996. 6996.
6996.
Hi, good evening to all of you. My name is Marisa Talbert. I'm calling on behalf of San Diegans for Justice to stand in solidarity with the other community members on this call to demand for the County Board of Supervisors to stop ICE transfers and further collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 1349.
1349.
1349.
1349.
Hello, my name is Veronica. I live in District 1. I'm calling as a leader with the ACLU of San Diego and Imperial Counties. We demand the accountability of the San Diego Sheriff's Office for sidestepping Senate Bill 54 and orchestrating the transfer of community members to ICE. So as long as the San Diego Sheriff's Office continues to work in collaboration with DHS agencies, the County of San Diego is complicit in the separation of families and the deportation of community members. We are calling upon the County Board of Supervisors to immediately stop these ICE transfers and to stop the use of county resources to aid in the negligence of the law. Transferring community members to ICE creates a climate of fear in immigrant communities and leaves the most vulnerable in our communities unprotected. Not to mention, does it breed distrust in law enforcement. You have heard the demands. These are repeated demands. It is time that the San Diego Board of Supervisors take action in holding the Sheriff's Office accountable for the sake of public safety for all San Diego community members. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 0805.
0805.
0805.
Hi, this is Vanessa from the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, also known as ACE. I'm calling to demand that the Sheriff's Department and all public departments stop collaborating with ICE. We ask you, we demand actually that you do not share information, resources, or public facilities with them, since they have lost the trust of the public with a heart at least. If we really want the Sheriff's Department to help make real change and justice possible, why don't we have them look into the atrocities that ICE continues to commit against immigrants? I get that we're trying to protect our country from terrorism, but we're doing a lousy job at it. What is so terroristic about a 1, a 2, a 3, a 5-year-old, a 12-year-old, and her mother crossing border lines for safety? Border lines that are imaginary, by the way, a social construct for power and greed. If anything, ICE is a domestic terrorist group because they are causing families trauma by separating them, literally ripping kids from their parents, then putting them in cages like animals, and then losing track of their whereabouts, of those children's parents. These are kids, these are lives. I don't know how to make it any more clear. Let's also highlight the fact that earlier someone mentioned in this Zoom that sharing ICE info with law enforcement would be in part to target undocumented sexual predators. Okay, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of cases of sexual harassment and abuse within ICE detention. We're talking about ICE staff committing these acts towards women and kids. Where is their protection? They deserve to be seen and protected. Quite frankly, to put it even simpler, quite frankly, if you're not a Native American, you're an immigrant, and there's nothing criminal about seeking a better life and a safer life here in the United States. That's what it's about. That's what it is about, living here in the U.S. So stop allowing crimmigration to exist. We can do a lot better to keep our society safe. ICE is a lazy, racist, and disgusting effort to do so. Fuck ICE and abolish it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 0616.
0616.
0616.
0616.
Hello, my name is Candy. I'm an organizer with Asian Solidarity Collective. The County Board of Supervisors must do the right thing and immediately stop ICE transfers and stop working with DHS. The County of SC continues to be complicit in the separation of families and deportation of BIPOC peoples and communities at the hands of ICE and Border Patrol agents. It is a disgrace that this continues to happen. To be able to even violate folks means one must not even see value or worth in a person, that they must completely remove a person as human so that they can continue to dehumanize. But value cannot be placed in hierarchy where one is more valued than another. Yet folks are out here begging to save their own lives from all of you, asking for humanization and humanity. This being said, all people have a right to exist, a right to be and live free with safety, peace, and to be seen as human. We urge the San Diego County to hold the San Diego Sheriff's Departments accountable and be truthful of their violations. This is a human crisis. If leaders cannot do what's right and start valuing all people, we will continue to organize and we'll see you out in these streets. We will continue to fight for liberation so all people can truly live safe, in peace, and fully free. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9713.
9713.
9713.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, good evening. My name is Eduardo, and I am a member of ACE, the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, and I'm here to give my voice to urge this board to put, for once, public safety as a forefront issue instead of increasing this violence. And quite frankly, with the increasing threat of the city going into purple tier, it's going to increase the amount of death, the likelihood for death in our community. So it is in fact doing the opposite of keeping us safe. So please cease, desist, and frankly apologize for any sort of collaboration in the past with ICE and kind of sidestepping this law that was put in place for our safety. So Please do what's right. Public safety first. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next caller is 2050.
2050.
2050.
Hello, this is Jack.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Jack Hsu from La Mesa, California. It's fairly clear from earlier testimony that the sheriff is not acting in good faith and is not following the spirit of state law. So my proposal to outgoing supervisors, you could do a great service to the people of our county to build trust in law enforcement, which is look into the possibilities of withholding pay and funding for this part of the sheriff's activities. We could start with a salary for the sheriff's officer. Ask county council to look into a motion to withdraw funding until the sheriff complies with state law, as well as any of the funding that is directed towards the printing of or the advertising of inmates that may be leaving the jail system. I think this is the way to address this. We have a legislative body, which are the county supervisors. Please act and act responsibly for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4165.
4165.
4165.
4165.
And if we don't hear from you, we will come back to you.
Regresamos con usted.
Our next caller is 8078.
8078.
8078.
8078.
Hello, good evening. My name is Carlos. I'm a proud member of ACE from Chula Vista. And I want to take a moment to allow everyone to imagine for a moment that you're at home, dining with your family, or at work, working hard to provide for your household, when out of nowhere, uniformed or even without uniformed people break into your house or workplace, restrain you like an animal, and place you in an unknown vehicle to kidnap you to take you to a camp with unhygienic conditions where racism, intimidation, and forms of torture is the norm. No, you're not in 1940s Nazi Germany. You're in modern day San Diego. So all the people that enable this to take place, I want you to know that you are as un-American as they come. You've lost your soul along the way of identity politics and probably never even knew what being a hardworking American really meant. Your faith probably has a place for people like you in the afterlife. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 5253.
5253.
5253.
Good evening. This is Patricia Huffman. I'm a 90-year resident of Chula Vista. I'm among dozens of people who spoke in person last year at TUSAC Forum on behalf of members of our community. We drove all the way to the county operating center because we wanted to share stories of the fear and pain and injustice experienced on a daily basis by immigrants trying to live their lives despite the constant threat of separation, detention, and deportation. The very next day, you voted against justice and well-being in our community behind closed doors. Not one member of our community spoke in favor of your unannounced vote to join the federal government's appeal to overturn 3 of our state's so-called sanctuary laws. The decision by the board did a lot of damage by undermining community trust and was seen as a slap in the face to immigrants and advocates like myself who are working daily to support and defend the rights and well-being of immigrants and their families in San Diego County. I would like to thank Supervisors Cox and Fletcher for opposing that reckless action and also for following through on their commitment to hold an evening Truth Act forum this year. You did listen and hear what we had to say last year. For Supervisors Dedman, Jacobs, and Gaspar, I would like to ask, whose safety were you protecting with your vote against California's state laws? You ignored us last year, but we're back again this year, and we will continue to return again and again until we're heard. And finally, For Sheriff Gore, what assurance can you give us that you will follow the letter and spirit of California sanctuary law, SB 54? As a California law enforcement officer, you should be following state law. In closing, I support all 4 of the demands presented to San Diego Immigrants' Rights Consortium. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7253. 7253.
7253. 7253.
If we don't hear from you, we will come back to you. Our next caller is 0179.
Si no lo escuchamos, regresamos con usted. La siguiente llamada es 0179.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Genevieve Jones-Wright. I am a co-founder and the executive director of Community Advocates for Justice and Moral Governance, or MOGO. I'm an attorney and a community advocate. In this capacity, I represent a young man who was one of the many victims of Sheriff Gore's policy that evades our state laws, puts community members at risk, and undermines public safety. We have to be very clear about what is happening here in San Diego County. Our sheriff, the top law enforcement officer in the county, is not enforcing our laws, at least not the ones he disagrees with, but rather he is breaking our state's sanctuary laws. In a direct response to our state lawmakers passing a bill that limits law enforcement's cooperation with federal immigration authorities like ICE, Sheriff Gore created a loophole where he makes public information about his detainees, such as personal identifying and release information. My client was arrested for a minor, nonviolent, and bogus offenses that would not carry immigration consequences even if he was convicted of them. The charges were never filed against him. After 2 days of being falsely imprisoned in one of our county jails, he was released. As he exited the jailhouse doors, he was immediately picked up by no less than 4 federal agents who placed him in handcuffs, transported him to a field office, and processed him into ICE custody as a direct result of Sheriff Gore publicly posting his release details for federal officers to see. This practice not only violates the Values Act, but also the Truth Act. Moreover, by Sheriff Gore's practices, he is embedding immigration consequences for every single offense that our undocumented community members may be accused of, whether they are guilty or not, and regardless of whether the law attaches such jeopardy. My client was put in danger by Sheriff Gore facilitating his transfer to immigration officials in more ways than one. My client, who did nothing wrong and who had never had any interaction with law enforcement before he was falsely arrested, is now fighting an immigration case and is at risk of being kept from his 2 children who are U.S. citizens. I want to be clear that even if the sheriff stops the formal transfers to ICE, this practice he has implemented to go around our laws would still put many of our community members at risk. I'm urging the Board of Supervisors to do something about stopping this hideous practice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 6090.
6090.
6090.
Hello, good evening. My name is Monica Hernandez. I am the Social Impact Director for Casa Familiar. On behalf of Casa Familiar and the San Isidro community members, we call upon the Board of Supervisors to hold the Sheriff's Department accountable by ending all official and non-official ICE transfers. Failure to do so makes you complicit in the separation of families, among other things. As a community, we will be closely following your decision and urge you to stand on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 2828.
2828.
2828.
2828.
My name is Ron. I'm with ACLU San Diego and Imperial Counties. I disapprove of the partnership between San Diego Police Department and ICE. Relations between police and the community are already highly strained in 2020 because of the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and locally the controversial arrest of Amari Johnson in La Mesa. Law enforcement is a stressful and difficult occupation as these officers put their lives on the line daily. And partnering with ICE just makes their job more difficult because these officers now have to learn immigration laws and have to make quick decisions during stops involving immigrants. In Arizona, the majority of police chiefs and sheriffs oppose a partnership with ICE. In that state, it's called SB 1070. They say that SB 1070 creates fear. For example, residents may not call the police to report crimes because they may have expired documents, are awaiting green card interviews, or lack immigration papers. There was a case in San Francisco that illustrates how partnership with ICE has hurt families and damages trust in law enforcement. A man sought the police's help in locating his stolen car, only to end up being detained by ICE for 2 months as a result of going to police. In another case, a father of 6 was transferred to ICE and deported after he was stopped by California State University Long Beach police for a broken headlight. This case led to outrage by students and their families who were shocked that police at an educational institution were engaging in immigration enforcement. The immigrant community should always feel comfortable contacting police when they need assistance. And this partnership of local police and ICE removes the confidence that they have in contacting local enforcement. Overall, this partnership destroys trust and does not benefit an already overworked police force. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 3583.
3583.
3583.
3583.
Hello, my name is Anaís Alegría. I'm a South Bay community member and educator, and I'm also a member of ACE. I'm contacting you to show that I am fully supportive of this forum. Thank you so much for having it. However, I do not support the collaboration between the Sheriff's Department and ICE. Due to the SB 54, I'm shocked that the San Diego Sheriff's Department is not abiding by it, and it's actually sidestepping. There should not be a collaboration whatsoever. We should not be sharing our resources, information, or public facilities with ICE in this form whatsoever. And it shocks me that we are funding separation and deportation. Our communities live in fear of ICE already, and now they're afraid of whatever may happen at the Sheriff's Department and whatever may happen once they leave the Sheriff's Department. And I really, really hope that San Diego Sheriff's Department starts abiding by SB 54, because it's ridiculous that it's not. It's ridiculous. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 0463.
0463.
0463.
0463.
And again, if we don't hear from you, we will come back to you. Our next caller.
Thank you.
Oh.
My name is Margaret. Yes. My name is Margaret Baker, and I'm speaking on behalf of South Bay People Power. We support all of the 4 demands put forth by the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium. We want to ensure justice and safety for immigrants who are caught in the cruel pipeline from the COVID-infected San Diego jails to ICE custody to the Otay Mesa Detention Center. On Sheriff Gore's watch, ICE agents are allowed to target immigrants caught in our local criminal justice system. By posting the daily release report and sharing space and resources with DHS agencies, the sheriff is fostering racial profiling, family separation, scapegoating of marginalized people, and a lot of pain and grief, as you're hearing in the calls today. Sheriff Gore's decision to collaborate in these ways does not make our community safe. It subjects immigrants and their families to unjust and punitive processes. Why should immigrants be treated differently when they are deemed eligible for release from our county jail? We feel they should be allowed to return to the community where they can seek the legal and other support they need. They should not be further separated from their families, abused, jailed, in some cases indefinitely, or deported. While the sheriff is under no obligation to transfer people to immigration, he does have a responsibility to protect all San Diegans. To our horror, in the midst of a pandemic, Sheriff Gore has failed to protect those in his care from COVID-19, including his very own employees, the incarcerated, and the broader community. His utter lack of transparency regarding this is appalling and destroys trust in our county. Studies show that every transfer multiplies COVID transmission and other health risks exponentially. Jails and detention centers aren't just amplifiers of a public health crisis. They are a public health crisis. So in contrast to last year, we fervently call for an immediate and permanent end to ICE transfers in our county. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next caller is 2053.
2053.
2053.
2053.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Widad Shlota. I am an American from Iraq. I live in Mission Hills, District 3 of Nation Fletcher. I'm speaking on behalf of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee and the ACLU of San Diego County Imperial Valley. I fled the fascist oppressive regime of Saddam Hussein in Iraq and its state of fear to come to this land of freedom, democracy, opportunity, and civil liberty. What ICE is doing to immigrants reminds me all too well of the nightmares I lived under Saddam's Republic of Fear. Please listen to your constituents and implement our 4 basic demands to show justice, safety, compassion to our vulnerable people. Stop publishing the inmates' pending release report to the SDSO website. Stop allowing ICE access to jails. Stop sharing resources with DHS. And stop all transfers of inmates to ICE. Supervisors, those going out, build a legacy. Build a legacy of compassion. Let us remember you by voting and listening to your constituents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7514.
7514.
7514.
7514.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening and salam, San Diego County Supervisors and fellow San Diegans. We appreciate your attention in addressing our concerns around the Truth Act. My name is Mishgan Afshan, and I'm a Muslim, Afghan-American, human rights advocate and co-founder of Borderlands for Equity. And as of today, a newly elected officer of the San Diego Refugee Forum and member of the San Diego Immigrants' Rights Consortium. We urge you all to address the circumventing of SB 54 between the Sheriff's Department and stop posting individuals pending release on their website, as well as sharing that information with federal immigration officials on joint task forces. The lack of transparency and accountability is disgusting and disrespectful to the will of the people of California who voted to pass this humanitarian legislation. We know that refugees and immigrants and our most vulnerable communities of color are continuously and assiduously profiled. And we know firsthand this continued harassment is unacceptable by ICE, and we call upon them to stop the ICE transfers here or anywhere in the state of California for that matter. As Jack Shu, our brother, stated, funding needs to be stripped so that our county resources must no longer be used to separate families and the deportation of our most vulnerable siblings. Thank you so much, and I yield my time.
Thank you. Our next caller is 3950.
3950.
3950.
3950.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi. My name is Irvin, and I am a member of ACE, Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. As my fellow callers have already stated, I'm calling to demand that the Sheriff's Department and all public departments stop collaborating with ICE. We ask that you do not share information, resources, or public facilities with them. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4728.
4728.
4728.
4728.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Silvia, soy de Distrito 1 y soy organizadora con ACE.
Good afternoon. My name is Silvia. I'm from District 1 and I'm an organizer with ACE.
Estoy llamando para exigir que el Departamento de Alguacil y todos los departamentos públicos pongan un alto a la colaboración con ACE.
I'm calling to demand that the Sheriff's Department and all public departments stop collaborating with ICE.
La gente no confía en los alguaciles y la colaboración con ICE solo empeora esta confianza.
Discúlpame, Silvia, la gente no confiamos en... ¿En quién?
En los sheriffs, los alguaciles.
Gracias, en los alguaciles. Gracias. People do not trust the sheriffs and they don't trust ICE.
Ya estamos viviendo con el terror del Departamento de Policía corrupto y los alguaciles de San Diego solo están agregando a la separación de familias.
We are already living under the fear of corrupt police forces, and the San Diego Sheriff's Department is only aiding and separating families.
Gore, tu racismo se está mostrando y obviamente podemos ver que no apoya a nuestra comunidad de inmigrantes.
Through his actions, we can see that Gore does not support immigrant communities, our communities.
Sí, que su racismo se está mostrando.
¿Perdón?
Y que su racismo se está mostrando.
Sí, and his racism is showing.
Esto solo lastima a nuestra comunidad y una vez que abolimos ICE, vamos a ir por quien colaboró con ellos. Y ya estamos empezando, nomás pregúntale a Gaspar.
This only hurts our communities, and once we abolish ICE, we're going to go after those that supported them, and we are already making progress. You can ask Gaspar.
Espero que este año sí escuchen a la comunidad porque supone que eso es su trabajo. Buenas noches.
I hope that this year you do listen to the community because that's your job. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4294.
4294.
4294.
4294.
Again, if we don't hear from you, we will come back to you. Our next caller is 7711.
De nuevo, si no lo escuchamos, regresamos con usted. La siguiente llamada es 7711.
7711.
7711.
Our next caller is 0691.
0691.
0691.
0691.
Hi, I'm Stacy, a member of Asian Solidarity Collective. I'm the daughter of Filipino immigrants. So like all of you on the Board of Supervisors, my privilege to be born in the U.S. and protected from ICE was neither earned nor worked for. I grew up watching my parents work 24/7 as a prerequisite to being treated decently in this country. And I can't imagine having to watch that while also fearing for them to be taken away. Children in our county are living with that fear because of the willingness of the Sheriff's Department to conduct ICE transfers and of this board to use county resources to aid them. ICE transfers cause long-lasting psychological and economic harm to members of our community. And after ignoring people on this forum for years, the Sheriff's Office continues to make lists of individuals pending release available for federal agents. What more will it take for you to listen? 40 Asian Americans or Pacific Islanders were transferred to ICE. I am disappointed by the board's and the sheriff's failure to protect our people, but this goes beyond cultural identity. We will show up in solidarity for each other as long as you continue to deny our collective humanity and undermine our trust. Stop ICE transfers and stop using county resources to separate families and deport our community members. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 3949.
3949.
3949.
3949.
Hi there, my name is Greg Prieto. I'm a professor at the University of San Diego, a volunteer with Alliance San Diego, and a resident of District 4. Since the widespread implementation of secure communities in 2013, I have studied and opposed local law enforcement agency collaboration with ICE. Framed as a professional courtesy and interagency cooperation, in reality, this collaboration imperils genuine public safety. And the reasons are by now well rehearsed. Immigrants are less likely to report crime, they're less likely to cooperate in police investigations, and in the case of survivors of domestic violence, to report their abuser. Indeed, when I was conducting interviews for my first book, one of the most stunning stories I heard was from an undocumented Mexican immigrant woman who endured many long months of abuse for fear of deportation had she called the police. Setting aside the fact that many of those charges or convictions that allow for deportation under the California Values Act are nonviolent and non-serious, we already have in place an enormous criminal justice system that adjudicates crime. Immigration enforcement is not a backstop for the criminal justice system, and adding immigration consequences to criminal punishment, especially after that punishment has been served, only serves to spread the consequences of crime beyond the individual to the family, the employer, and the community. And for an immigration offense that could be just as easily resolved with a fair and reasonable adjustment of their status rather than deportation. These practices leave in their wake separated families, economic turmoil, and widespread fear. And at a time when the Sheriff's Department has come under increased and well-deserved scrutiny by the Black Lives Matter movement, collaboration with ICE only increases the consequences of racially disproportionate policing by attaching deportation to criminal punishment. The time is long past for reform to our police institutions, and I urge, especially our incoming Democratic majority on the Board of Supervisors, to do everything in your power to stop these needless separations and end all official and unofficial collaboration with ICE. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 0924.
0924.
0924.
0924.
Good evening. I am Michelle Ramos Pedicia, an associate professor at California State San Marcos, a constituent in District 50, and co-chair and co-founder of University Without Borders. Our immigrants are vital and valuable members of our community. Law enforcement agencies have an obligation to make sure all people in our communities feel safe, regardless of immigration status. Senate Bill 54, the California Values Act, is designed to foster trust in law enforcement and improve public safety for all. The San Diego Sheriff's Department continues to sidestep SB 54 when transferring community members to ICE. This collaboration creates a climate of distrust and fear in immigrant communities, leaving the most vulnerable in our communities unprotected. As a resident of North County, San Diego, I urge the Sheriff Department and the San Diego County Board of Supervisors to stop their collaboration between SDPD and ICE. It is wrong and harmful to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8102.
8102.
8102.
8102.
Hi, my name is Clay Tran, and I'm with Asian Solidarity Collective. I am calling on the County Board of Supervisors to immediately stop ICE transfers and to cease the use of county resources to destroy families and deport community members. My parents were lucky enough to escape legally with their lives to this country. Not all families are so fortunate to have this experience in a life or death situation. Regardless of their immigration status, all members of our community deserve to feel safe and protected, especially in the midst of a pandemic that affects all people, regardless of their citizenship or their country of origin. Additionally, the transfers of community members to ICE pose a legitimate threat to public safety. As an employee in the biotech industry, I feel obligated to emphasize yet again that during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Otay Mesa detention facility has had some of the highest number of COVID-19 cases in the country. Transferring individuals to be detained at a facility where COVID-19 is currently endemic is at best negligent and at worst downright dangerous. These increased populations increase the opportunity for the virus to not only spread, but also to mutate, potentially endangering the entire community at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 3803.
3803.
Sorry, it's 3083. My apologies. 3083.
Una disculpa. 3083. 3083.
¿Me escucha? Buenas noches.
Sí, buenas noches.
Sí. Mi nombre es María Flores, soy miembro de ACE, Alianza de Californianos, y soy residente de Vista, California.
Good evening. My name is Maria Flores. I'm a member of ACE and a resident of Vista.
Exijo que la policía pare de estar colaborando con ICE, especialmente en medio de esta pandemia.
I demand that the police stop collaborating with ICE, especially during this pandemic.
Es triste que la policía, en vez de estar haciendo su trabajo, está colaborando con ICE. Es una corrupción de parte de ellos.
It's sad that the police, instead of doing their job or collaborating with ICE, it's a form of corruption on their part.
Y eso hace que nuestra comunidad no tenga confianza y esté en peligro porque no se reportan los crímenes.
This puts our community in danger because they don't have any trust and then they don't report the dangers that they face.
Porque tiene miedo a hacer la llamada sabiendo que la policía colabora con ICE.
Because they're afraid to make that call knowing that the police collaborate with ICE.
Exigimos que pare de compartir información con cualquier agencia.
We are demanding that you stop sharing information with any agency.
Basta de estar separando familias. Queremos que nos vean como seres humanos, no como criminales.
Enough with separating families. We want you to see us as human beings, not as criminals.
Ya que somos una comunidad de personas trabajadoras.
Since we are a community of working people, or hard-working people.
Y exigimos que este foro sea en español para nuestra comunidad que no habla inglés. Y estemos informados.
And we demand that this forum be held in Spanish for our community members that don't speak English, and that way they can be well informed.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4373.
4373.
4373.
4373.
And again, if we don't hear from you, we will come back to you.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Michelle Solari, and I'm with Alliance San Diego. And I'm calling today because it's clear that what we want is for SB 54 to actually be held up against the Sheriff's Department. We want them to abide by the law as written. And I wanted to share with you today an experience that I had with a client of mine who was transferred over to ICE custody. This is happening to real people. She was transferred, she was placed in detention. I went and I talked to ICE counsel, and they didn't even have a legitimate reason to put her in ICE detention. She had to be in jail for multiple days, separated from her family, treated like a criminal, and she had legal status in this country. And the offense for which she was picked up for was not an offense for which she could be deportable. She was in the process of getting a green card. This is something that harms real people every single day. If it harms people with legal status, imagine what happens to those that do not have legal status. Imagine the fear that they have when reporting things to our police, to our sheriff's department, when they fear for their lives in this community. We call upon you to enforce the law as written and demand that the sheriff's department abide by SB 54. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8579.
8579.
8579.
My name is Piggy Rock, and I represent Asian Solidarity Collective. I'm calling in today to call out the law enforcement agencies and sheriff department's unwillingness to see past protocols and power trips. I call out the unwillingness to listen to the voices and cries of the community. I call out the lack of transparency and accountability and the funneling of humans to ICE despite SB 54. I call out the disregard of COVID-19 and the recklessness of sending peoples and families into a space that threatens the safety and health of everyone who's thrown in there, thrown into a box, some packed in,
some to be shipped off, treated as products rather than people. As a Filipina, Okinawan, Asian American, I stand in solidarity with all BIPOC peoples in demanding rights of humanization, love, and care in our communities. We demand the halt of deportation. We demand that families stay together. We demand the immediate stop of ICE transfers. Shut it down. We must demand continuously until those who are the most vulnerable can exist without borders, barriers, separation, and bullshit.
Thank you. Our next caller is 2258. 2258.
2258-2258.
Hello, good evening. My name is Shania Smith-Burciaga. I am a member of ACE Action. I am calling to demand that the Sheriff's Department and all public departments stop collaborating with ICE. We ask that you do not share information, resources, or public facilities with them since they have lost the trust of the public. Prioritize the community, not violence. Good day.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4294.
4294.
4294.
4294.
Again, if we don't hear from you when we call on you, we will come back to you. Our next caller is 4165.
De nuevo, si no lo escuchamos cuando lo llamamos, regresaremos con usted. La siguiente llamada es 4160.
Hello.
Hi, my name is May. I'm a member of Asian Solidarity Collective and a constituent from District 4. As a first-generation Filipino immigrant, I stand in solidarity with our BIPOC communities and demand that the San Diego County Board of Supervisors take action immediately to stop ICE transfers and to stop the use of our county resources to separate families and deport our community members. As other callers have pointed out, 1 year after this forum brought up the issue, the Sheriff's Department is still providing public lists of individuals pending release, practically placing them in the arms of federal immigrant agents. This is done intentionally to sidestep the rules put in place by SB 54, and they've continued to ignore calls for accountability from the people they supposedly protect and serve. This strengthens the climate of fear and distrust already felt in our immigrant communities and leaves our most vulnerable unprotected. Our law enforcement agencies have an obligation to make sure all people in our communities feel safe, regardless of their immigration status. And as long as the San Diego Sheriff's Department continues to transfer individuals to ICE and collaborate with DHS agencies, the County of San Diego is complicit in the separation of families and the deportation of our community members. So the County's Board of Supervisors must act and listen to our most vulnerable communities and support our health and welfare. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7711.
7711.
7711.
Hello. Hello. My name's Joshua Ariola. I'm a member of Asian Solidarity Collective and a resident of San Diego County. I am deeply concerned that the Sheriff's Department has been transferring members of our community to ICE using already limited resources. This would be inappropriate during normal times, but as others have pointed out, it's especially egregious while we are in the middle of a global pandemic. Just this morning, we learned that 55 inmates at George Bailey Detention Facility tested positive. In addition, there's no evidence that undocumented individuals commit crimes at a higher rate than citizens. In fact, a recent study titled Sanctuary Status and Crime in California found that there is, quote, no relationship between SB 54's enactment and violent crime in our state. So the Sheriff's Department's actions to circumvent SB 54, it makes no sense from a public health or public safety point of view. It makes no sense if you look at the data, and it makes no sense in terms of our morals and values of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8021.
8021.
8021.
8021.
We will move on to 8564.
8564.
8564.
8564.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Hi
you.
there. My name is Lucas. I'm a volunteer with the ACLU of San Diego and Imperial Counties. And my comment demands to hold law enforcement agencies accountable for the mistreatment of community members. The collaboration between law enforcement and ICE needs to stop in the transferring and deportation of individuals, especially in the midst of the COVID pandemic. Both law enforcement and ICE are entities.
Sorry about that. I think we lost you. This is 8564. You may have to unmute yourself again. Apologies.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, as I was saying, both law enforcement and ICE, those systems are both reinforce systems of racial violence in our country. And the criminalization of vulnerable and undocumented community individuals are evident examples of how they're corrupt with the criminal justice system. These practices both perpetuate anxiety in our communities and damage the well-being of our communities. And we need to put an end to ICE transfers, and we cannot continue tearing these families apart. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8021.
8021.
8021.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Alicia, soy miembro de ACE. Estoy llamando para exigir que el Departamento del Alguacil y todos los departamentos públicos pongan un alto a la colaboración con ICE.
Good evening, my
Pedimos que
name
no
is
se permita.
Alicia. Te pido un favor, déjame traducirte poquito a poquito. Good evening, my name is Alicia. I'm a member of ACE. I'm calling to demand that the Sheriff's Department and all public departments stop collaborating with ICE. Adelante, Alicia.
Pedimos que no se permita compartir información, recursos o facultades públicas con ellos, ya que el público ha perdido la confianza en ellos.
We ask that you stop the sharing of information, public resources, or any other public sources with them, since we have lost trust in them.
Mantengan las familias juntas, no las separen. Esos niños no los tengan encerrados. Que sea una prioridad a la ayudar a la comunidad, no a la violencia. Buen día.
Keep families together, those poor children that are separated, and help the families and communities. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4916. 4916.
4916.
Hi, my name is Joanne Lodge, and I am a teacher in Vista, California. And I just wanted to share a data point that was kind of uncovered by my students who did research. They surveyed 120 people in the community, and 8% of them would use the police if they needed assistance of any form due to the immigration status of their own or family members. I also wanted to share a personal anecdote about this. In my own family, which is mixed status, we had a mental health crisis with a family member, and definitely the code in the family is that under no circumstances do you ever call the police. And in this situation, it ended up with my family member dying by suicide. I want you to know that he was a brother and a son and a father and a husband, and he was loved, and we miss him every day. So I implore you to see the humanity of the people that you're impacting. They're human beings. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 2556.
2556.
2556.
2556.
We will move on to 4021.
Continuamos con 4021, 4021.
4021.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Hi there. My name is Caroline Deseret. I live in Vista. Good evening. I have the same asks, as the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium. I think it's, I've testified on this before, so it's a little frustrating to not have seen any changes. But the basic idea is that if we want to increase community trust in the police and sheriffs, then the spirit needs to be adhered to of SB 54. And the other question that I have really is that given that we have a criminal justice system to deal with issues of criminality, I don't really understand why there's any need at all to conflate the two and to have people leaving custody only to be handed off to ICE. And that's really what it is. When the list is published and they're waiting out in the parking lot, how is that different from when they used to wait inside? It's pretty much the same. It's the same thing. Also, as someone who volunteered for a long time working with victims of family violence with Women's Resource Center, and also as a volunteer for San Diego Rapid Response Network and North County Immigration Task Force, ACLU, over the years who's worked with the immigrant community, I just need to reiterate what other folks have said, which is that, people in the immigrant community do not call the police when they're victims of crime because they're afraid. And the whole, one of the purposes of SB 54 is to make the whole community safer so that people are not in fear of the police. And as long as this collaboration goes on, it's not going to happen. So in other, we have had an instance where a woman, okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyhow, no more transfers. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4294.
Sí, bueno.
Sí, bueno.
Buenas noches. Buenas noches. ¿Sí me escuchan ahora sí?
Sí.
Ok. Buenas noches. Mi nombre es Marina Ortega. Soy miembro del grupo ICE.
Good evening. My name is Mariana Ortega, and I'm a member of ACE.
Llamo para pedir que hagan conciencia de la gran importancia del inmigrante en la contribución económica.
I'm calling to ask that you are aware of the great importance and contribution of immigrants to our economy.
Ya que es el inmigrante el que realiza la mano de obra pesada.
Since it is the immigrant who does the hard manual labor.
La cual difícilmente lo hace la gente ciudadana blanca.
The same work that is rarely done by the white citizens.
Por ello, me atrevo a pedir a todos los departamentos, incluyendo al del alguacil.
Because of this, I ask that all the public departments, including the sheriffs,
pongan un alto a la colaboración con ICE.
Stop any collaboration with ICE.
Y dejen de separar familias. Gracias y buenas noches.
And stop separating families. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8708.
8708.
8708.
8708.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jesus Martin. I am calling in today to argue that law enforcement agencies should be accountable to the people they protect and serve. The San Diego Sheriff Department is making everyone unsafe by transferring community members to ICE. By conducting these transfers, community members are less likely to call our local law enforcement if they feel that they will be held and transferred to ICE. Apart from this, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Old-Time Mesa Detention Facility has had some of the highest numbers of COVID cases, and through the actions of the Sheriff's Department, these numbers have grown. Transferring individuals to be detained at a facility where COVID-19 continues to spread is negligent and downright dangerous. As long as the San Diego Sheriff's Department continues to transfer individuals to ICE and collaborate with the DHS agencies, the San Diego County is complicit in the separation of families and enables the continuity of arbitrary detention. I urge the Sheriff's Department to stop ICE transfer and stop using county resources to aid in the separation of families and the deportation of community members. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9483.
9483.
9483.
9483.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Christian Mejia. I'm a member of the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, and I'm calling just to echo the same sentiments that have been shared throughout the night. I am unequivocally opposed to these ICE transfers, and I believe you should be too. I would think that California being a sanctuary state, that this would be unquestionable in our commitment to the residents of our community, and that should not be like the safety of our community should not be determined by one's legal status. I hope that you take some really deep introspection on why these actions are occurring for any type of violations that the Sheriff's Department is doing, because this is like a state, you know, I don't know if it's like a super strict law, but like, you know, you just shouldn't be doing that. And there should be some real investigations and consequences for those who have been committing harm. The Otay Mesa Detention Center is a death camp. People in there, every minute that people are spending in there, they are vulnerable and susceptible to contracting the virus, susceptible to sexual violence, and all sorts of horrible things where the accountability does not seem to be present. Please prioritize this community and not on state-sanctioned violence. I wish you a great day, and thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Our next caller is 5064.
5064.
5064.
5064.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Fuentes, and I'm the Policy and Communications Director for California LULAC. We are writing this public comment on behalf of the largest and oldest Latino civil rights organization, the League of United Latin American Citizens. It is unconscionable that we are putting more lives at risk to contract the deadly novel coronavirus. We call upon the County Board of Supervisors to immediately stop ICE transfers. The San Diego Sheriff's Department needs to stop using county resources to aid in the separation of families and deporting our community members. The Truth Act was put in place to protect our families. On November 5th, 2020, it was reported that the Otay Mesa Detention Center was facing its second COVID-19 outbreak. The Otay Mesa Detention Facility has had some of the highest numbers of COVID-19 cases in the country. Transferring individuals to be detained at a facility where COVID-19 continues to spread is leading our families to their death. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4217.
4217.
4217.
Hello, my name is Benny Martinez. I'm a community activist, resident of District 3. We had an agreement with SB 54 that the local police was not going to be cooperating with ICE agents. And there was a hearing done last year where people voiced their concerns and it was ignored. Even further, the County Board of Supervisors decided to do an amicus brief and sue the state of California that they lost. The pending release report is just one of the loopholes that the sheriff has been using to let ICE agents know when detainees are going to be released. On top of that, they have been making police officers personal phone calls to ICE agents to let them know who is undocumented in this country. They have been pretending to be doctors under COVID-19 and calling folks that are suspected to be undocumented in this country, telling them that they're going to send doctors to test them for COVID. They have been kidnapping people off the streets with uniforms that says police, taking them in minivans, taking them in the back of alleyways, and subjected the detainees to torture in order to make them sign on their deportation. And if that wasn't enough, they have been arresting DACA people and taking them to the detention center and Boulevard away from prying eyes. And this under the eyes of the County Board of Supervisors and the local sheriff. The community got organized, and we just voted out the current majority Republican Board of Supervisors, and now we're having a new board. And I would like to say hello to Christine Gaspar, because when she met me, she laughed at me. But now she's out of a job because the community organized and voted them out.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7203.
7203.
7203.
Hello, my name is Wendy Galernter, and I'm a small business owner who's lived in Pacific Beach for the past 34 years. I'm speaking today because I'm so concerned that when the Sheriff's Department collaborates with ICE and the DHS in the horrible ways that have been described tonight, they're doing exactly the opposite of what law enforcement should be doing. By undermining SB 54, they're subverting the law rather than enforcing it. By decreasing trust in law enforcement and by continuing to transfer individuals to the OTI detention facility where COVID rates are high, they're decreasing public safety rather than protecting it. And by participating in the heartbreaking, immoral, and unnecessary separation of children from their families, they're encouraging immoral behavior rather than taking moral leadership. The Sheriff's Department has to address these unacceptable contradictions and must therefore comply with the 4 demands of the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8281.
8281.
8281.
8281.
We will move on to 5273.
Continuamos con 52 73 5273.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Ismahan Abdullahi, and I am with Mass Pace, also part of the San Diego RIC. There must be an immediate stop to ICE having access to county jails. As long as the San Diego Sheriff's Department continues to transfer individuals to ICE and collaborate with DHS agencies, the County of San Diego is complicit in the separation of families and deportation of our members. We are calling upon the County Board of Supervisors to immediately stop ICE transfers and stop using county resources to aid in the separation of families and deportation of community members, especially during the global pandemic that we're currently in right now. Transferring individuals to be detained at a facility where COVID-19 continues to spread is both negligent and downright dangerous, and it increases the ability of the virus to spread. With these glaring facts and so much that has already been said that I will reiterate, we must separate the Sheriff's Department from ICE and DHS activities, and I urge the county to act now before further trust is eroded. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8281.
8281.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Marely Ramirez. I am a leader with Indivisible San Diego Persist and a partner with SDIRC. I want to emphasize that there is no need for the inmate spending release report, which is currently updated every 8 to 10 hours on the San Diego Sheriff's Department website. First of all, victims of domestic violence are only interested in obtaining information regarding their predator and no one else. Second, the inmate's pending release report is readily accessible to ICE personnel. Therefore, the Sheriff's Department is being the conduit in the transfer of community members to ICE. How shameful. And third, the report is also accessible to cyber criminals who sell this kind of information on the deep dark web. Therefore, the Sheriff's Department is fomenting cyber crimes. If the sheriff's office truly wants to make, quote, San Diego County the safest urban county in the nation, end quote, you must stop making excuses and stop posting these reports. Is there a solution? Absolutely. Provide inmate pending release information on an individual basis. That is, if and only if a first name, middle name, and a last name is provided. I want to emphasize to the current Board of Supervisors and to the new board members, there is absolutely no need for the publication of the inmate pending release report. Year after year, we have requested to stop the release of the report. We have not been heard. We the people are tired of excuses. We demand that the sheriff, the sheriff's department, and the Board of Supervisors gets off those warm, cozy chairs and get to work. Remember, we pay you. Do your job, or you will see more of us. We the people want some answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next caller is 1243.
1243.
1243.
1243.
We will move on to 0854. Oh, 1243 is here.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I've been waiting for a while. So anyways, I just read an article from Vox.com saying that the Democratic sheriffs of Georgia and South Carolina, they both have vowed to sever their ties with ICE. It seems like we have to remove our elected officials who's not following the laws. What's the point of implementing laws if our own sheriff's department is breaking it? I don't understand. SB 54 has passed and it was implemented, but yet the laws are being broken by the very people that's supposed to hold everyone else accountable. I urge every elected official, including supervisors and the sheriff's department, to really look into this idea of you actually following the law, set up the standards so we can all follow it. So thank you very much. And by the way, my name is Alina Junawabi. I'm from Cara, San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9719. 9719.
9719.
Hola, muy buenas tardes.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Oh, we had two callers who were simultaneously unmuting, so it must be 9719.
9719. Si podría otra vez oprimir asterisco.
Bueno.
Sí, ok, bueno, adelante.
Sí. Oh, hola, muy buenas tardes. Soy Javier, soy miembro de ACE.
Good afternoon. My name is Javier. I'm a member of ACE.
Sí, mi razón de mi llamada es para decirles que por favor detengan al departamento del sheriff que no esté colaborando con ICE.
The reason for my call today is to ask that you please stop the San Diego Sheriff from collaborating with ICE.
Y de alguna otra organización pública de que no estén colaborando con ICE.
And any other public organization from collaborating with ICE.
Porque la verdad, a veces, tanto como nosotros como inmigrantes, sufrimos de estas redadas que hacen ellos, que pues la verdad nosotros venimos a trabajar y amamos América.
The truth is that we as immigrants suffer from the raids that they do. We come and to work and we love America.
Y la verdad se me hace algo injusto de que, pues la verdad siento como que estamos en 1942, como que si estamos en la Segunda Guerra Mundial, en campos de concentración. y que nosotros somos los judíos que estamos en nuestras casas temiendo a ver a qué horas nos sacan para ya nomás les falta poner un campo de concentración con gas y eliminarnos.
I really feel like it's unjust, like we are living in 1942 during the Second World War with concentration camps. In this case, we would be like the Jewish people living in our houses, waiting for them to come and get us and gas us and eliminate us.
Y por favor, ustedes que están ahí sentados, que pueden tomar una decisión, que pueden tomar acción, por favor, actúen en esta vez, por favor, porque ya les hemos pedido que actúen y no han actuado como deberían de ser, de ayudar a nuestra comunidad.
And please, for those of you sitting here this evening that can actually take action, please do it this time. We've asked you before. We need you to help our communities.
Y también otra cosa, no nomás asustan a nosotros los inmigrantes, también asustan mucho a sus compatriotas ciudadanos, que también temen porque ven la brutalidad que hacen con nosotros.
They don't just scare us, by the way, they scare your fellow citizens because they see the brutality of the actions against us.
Y a mí me pasó un caso de que ICE y el sheriff no tenían ninguna cosa que hacer en mi casa, me apuntaron con pistolas a toda mi familia, nos humillaron como que si fuéramos, como que estuviéramos en 1942, ya casi nomás por darnos un balazo a cada uno, miembro de nuestra familia.
It happened to me and my family with ICE and the Sheriff's Department for absolutely no reason. They came to our house, they pointed guns at us, at me, at my family. They humiliated us, and it was just like being in 1942. We were just waiting for them to shoot each member of our family.
Nuestros vecinos, la verdad, nos apoyaron mucho y la verdad, todavía de estas organizaciones casi no diría corruptas, pero la verdad no estaban actuando de acuerdo a la ley y salieron riéndose y nuestros vecinos estaban viendo la cochinada que estaban haciendo.
Our neighbors really supported us when this happened, and I'm not going to call them corrupt organizations, but they were there, they were laughing at us. It was a gross violation, and our neighbors saw it.
Y no tenían ninguna orden de aprehensión ni nada. ¿Por qué? Porque soy una persona de que voy, trabajo, tengo 2 trabajos, no tengo tiempo para mi familia y pues la verdad venimos a trabajar. Y muchas gracias, que pasen buenas noches. Espero que ustedes que están ahí sentados, que están ganando su buen sueldo y que nosotros no ganamos muy bien y aún así seguimos adelante y por favor hagan algo.
And they had no arrest warrant. And they didn't have one because I'm a hard worker. I have 2 jobs. We weren't doing anything wrong. And I really hope that you that are sitting there and earning a good living wage while we are struggling to earn enough to feed our families can get some support from you. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4340.
4340.
4340.
4340.
We'll move on to 4238.
4238.
4238.
4238.
Hi, my name is Dulce Garcia. I'm undocumented and an immigration attorney. I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for changing the forum to an evening meeting. As you can see, there are over 100 people that are speaking up despite a pandemic and the difficulties having to log in, and e-comments were still coming in as the meeting was starting. So I want to thank and commend the community as well. Every single person has spoken in favor of the sheriff stopping the transfers to ICE. We want the sheriff to follow the state law and not use loopholes as an excuse to circumvent the spirit of the law and what the community is asking for. The sheriff mentioned earlier a partnership with the community. The fact that we're willing to meet with the sheriff's office does not mean that we have a partnership with the sheriff. A partnership with the sheriff is what ICE has where they're sharing resources. I do want to thank the Sheriff's Office for having a conversation that was leading to this forum, but that is not a partnership when the Sheriff continues to collaborate with Border Patrol and ICE. It's not a partnership when the Sheriff continues to unnecessarily publish every single day the list of people that are being released. We're asking for transparency and accountability. One Truth Act forum a year is not enough. Limited reports published once a year is not enough. We need more information and we need it more often. Where is the presentation that the Sheriff was supposed to have published last Friday for this community to review before this forum? So I asked the Sheriff, what are you hiding? As we're going through a pandemic, we continue to receive calls from people in detention afraid of dying of COVID and also suffering harassment and despicable violations of human rights in ICE custody. So to the incoming Board of Supervisors, please listen to the beautiful community. We're not only speaking up tonight, but we spoke out by voting Christine Gaspar out of office. She was all about hate and failed to even show respect to us last year. It's time for a change. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 0419.
0419.
0419.
Yeah, hi. My name's David Harris. I live in District 4, and I also do some work with South Bay People Power. And been listening for 2 hours to comments, and I agree and echo all the comments that have been made, and the lack of trust with the community and policing has to stop. And as a member of a community that's very, very diverse culturally, and on my street alone, there's 7 or 8 languages spoken. I know some of those people do not have legal citizenship. And as I walk up and down the street and talk to my neighbors, what I hear from them is they will not call the police regardless of what's going on in the neighborhood because they fear arrest, and being arrested means they end up in jail and then they end up in the sheriff's custody and can be quickly turned over to ICE once they're let out of jail, even for a minor infraction. So I feel less safe as a member of my community because of that collaboration between the Sheriff's Department and ICE. So I ask that stop, and it stop immediately. And I also want to thank the Board of Supervisors for doing this forum in the evening so that more of us could participate. And also want to thank Sheriff Gore for being a part of this and for listening. Thanks very much. Good night.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4340.
4340.
4340.
4340.
Hola, ¿me escuchan?
Sí, adelante.
Ahora sí. Hola, buenas tardes. Mire, soy miembro de ACE. Me llamo Eduardo y estoy llamando para exigir al departamento del alguacil que por favor y de todos los departamentos públicos pongan un alto a la colaboración con ICE. Pues pido en nombre de la comunidad y en mi nombre que no se permita compartir información, recursos o facultades públicas, porque pues sí nos hacen muy vulnerables en la manera de vivir.
Te voy a parar ahí, Eduardo, para traducirte. So good evening, my name is Eduardo. I'm a member of ACE. I'm calling to ask you to please stop the collaboration between the sheriff and ICE and or any other public offices with ICE. And in the name of the community, we are asking that you stop the collaboration and the sharing of any type of resources or public funds with ICE. Adelante.
Yeah, sí, nada más, realmente no me ha pasado nada, estoy tranquilo en el país y todo, haciendo las cosas lo más bien que puedo, pero hay veces que personas se dan cuenta que no estás con el estatus bien y es acto de burlas, pero pues todo de ahí en adelante, o sea, por eso pido de favor que no compartan información.
Fortunately, I am okay. I have been okay so far, but sometimes people realize that perhaps your status isn't up. They realize the state of your status, and this can put you in danger, or some other things can happen to you. So I just ask that you stop collaborating with ICE.
Ya sería todo. Muchas gracias.
That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 2556.
2556.
You may go ahead.
Adelante, 2556. Tiene que apretar asterisco 6.
If you'd like to.
Hi, sorry, folks. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my apologies. Hi, good evening. My name is Juan Vargas, and I am a resident of Escondido and a member of North County Immigration Task Force. And I'm calling today to say that immigration status should not make a person feel less safe. So I'm from Escondido, a city where years of police and ICE entanglement has created a sense of distrust amongst the undocumented community. And this distrust continues even years after SB 54 has passed. And I'm here to tell you that that rebuilding this trust is not an easy task to rebuild at all. So SB 54 was designed to repair the distrust with law enforcement and foster a better relationship with all residents, regardless of immigration status. Unfortunately, the San Diego Sheriff's Department is more interested in receiving pats on the back by ICE by continuing the transfers of community members to ICE, rather than creating better opportunities for public safety for all community members. So we are here today to ensure that the San Diego Sheriff's Department is held accountable to the communities it has vowed to protect and serve. It is a fact that when community members know that calling 911 could trigger a deportation, they are less likely to contact them in case of emergency, especially when ICE is just a signature away from accessing the jails to permanently remove community members for their mistakes. Any assistance to ICE by local police departments or the Sheriff's Department is a blow to any opportunity of trust by our communities. If the San Diego Board of Supervisors believes in repairing the continuous harm done by law enforcement in our county, I ask that the San Diego Sheriff Department stop posting the inmates pending release report on the SDSO website. I ask that they stop allowing ICE access to the jails. I ask that they stop collaborating and sharing resources with the Department of Homeland Security, such as those requested this year that aim to stop public expression and protest. I ask that you stop all transfers of community members to ICE. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next caller is 0854.
0854.
0854.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening. I'm Kim Knox, representing the League of Women Voters of San Diego and North County, San Diego. The League of Women Voters supports law enforcement practices that ensure correctional systems provide humane, dignified, and non-discriminatory treatment of incarcerated people and personnel. We also support law enforcement practices that build community trust. Our local law enforcement agencies should not be involved in the enforcement of immigration law. Community trust and safety are threatened when local law enforcement shares resources with the Department of Homeland Security, which includes ICE and CBP. In particular, the community loses trust in the sheriff when he chooses to call on ICE and CBP to become actors in local law enforcement. In order to disentangle local law enforcement from DHS, the sheriff must stop sharing resources, including databases, collaborating on task forces, and requesting person power and weapons such as pepper balls used to suppress public expression and protest as occurred last summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 2791.
2791.
2791.
2791.
Hola, ¿me pueden escuchar?
Sí, adelante.
Muy bien. Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Angélica Santiago, coordinadora de programa con el National Latino Resource Center y residente del Condado Norte de San Diego.
Good evening. My name is Angelica Santiago. I am the program coordinator for the National Latino Association, and I am in North County.
Research Center.
Sorry,
Mi papel principal es trabajar con nuestros jóvenes y familias para superar los obstáculos para alcanzar una educación superior.
My main role is to work with the youth to be able to achieve a higher education.
Como todos ustedes deberían saber, esta pandemia ha creado obstáculos adicionales para nuestros jóvenes y sus familias, lo cual incluyen familias de estratos mixtas.
Perdón, ¿lo cual incluye familias qué?
De estratos mixtas, mixed status families.
Okay. So as you should know, this pandemic has caused many of our youth to face unprecedented challenges, and this includes our mixed race families.
Nuestras familias enfrentan inseguridades de poder poner el pan a la mesa, poder mantener un hogar, el temor de perder a un ser querido por COVID-19, la pérdida de empleo y nuestra juventud luchando por navegar en la escuela a pesar de esta pandemia.
Our families are facing the fear of not being able to provide for their families, to keep their houses, to the fear of losing a loved one to COVID, and our youth are struggling with all of these things on top of all of this, everything else.
Sin embargo, sabemos y vemos que nuestras familias y jóvenes están pasando por dificultades. Las agencias de ley continúan cuidando a nuestras comunidades, lo cual deberían proteger y defender.
Sin embargo, perdón. Se me olvidó qué idioma iba a hablar. Despite this, our youth continue to work hard and work, and the law should continue to protect all of our communities. ¿Sí? Perdón, me confundí.
Por ejemplo, en este momento estoy trabajando con una familia y esta familia es de estrata mixta, mixed status family, y están teniendo problemas familiares. Pero ellos no le pueden llamar a gente de la ley por la razón que tienen el temor de poder ser deportados. So, el estudiante, la mamá, no tienen esa confianza.
For example, I am currently working for a family who happens to be mixed race, but they're having some difficulties, but they can't call law enforcement because they're afraid to report anything and be deported. So there's a student and a mother that are. Go ahead.
So, los organismos encargados de hacer cumplir la ley, como el Departamento de Sheriff y ustedes que están sentados, tienen la obligación de asegurarse de que todas las personas de nuestras comunidades se sientan seguras sin importar su estado migratorio.
So, organizations such as the Sheriff's Department and you who are sitting here this evening have the obligation to make sure that all people in our communities feel safe and protected.
Las transferencias de ICE y la colaboración que es sin ética e inhumana debe que parar. No más. Gracias por su tiempo.
The ICE transfers and the lack of the unethical actions need to stop. Your collaboration with ICE needs to stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9918.
9918.
9918.
9918.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Michael, District 3, and I'm a member of Asian Solidarity Collective and Surge San Diego. I'm calling to demand that the San Diego Sheriff stop collaborating with ICE and circumventing existing state legislature that makes it accountable to San Diego communities. It is completely unnecessary to assist ICE in their efforts to destroy families in our community. The sheriff's actions are endangering human lives with the rampant threat of COVID in ICE detention facilities. The board's unwillingness to prevent these transfers and end ties with DHS agencies like ICE makes them complicit with the death, violence, and trauma inflicted on our undocumented neighbors. COVID cases are spiking, and you're going to let the sheriff endanger more lives? Are we all in this together? We're calling upon the County Board of Supervisors to immediately uphold the demands made by SDIRC. Hey, Gore, we're coming for that job too, so don't get too comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4550.
4550.
4550.
4550.
Again, if we don't hear from you, we will come back to you.
De nuevo, si no lo escuchamos, regresamos con usted.
Our next caller is 2052.
Siguiente llamada es 2052.
2052.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Gonzalez, and I live in El Cajon. I'm also the founder and executive director of the Allies to End Detention Project of the Torchlight Justice Foundation. The utter refusal by this board to uphold the letter and the spirit of the California State Truth Act is an affront to our community values. As has been made abundantly clear at this forum tonight and in years past, our community rejects xenophobia, racism, and hatred in all its forms. We demand that this board and the San Diego County Sheriff's Department do the same and stop governing from a place of cowardice. I invite you to hear the voice of a young man named Luis, who wrote to our organization from Otay Mesa Detention Center. He writes, Quisiera que el mundo sepa que, I would like the world to know that los migrantes somos la esperanza de nuestras familias. Migrants are the hope of our families, la esperanza de nuestros países, the hope of our countries, la esperanza de una mejor sociedad, the hope for a better society, la esperanza de un mejor mundo, the hope for a better world. Somos la esperanza que no para de brillar. We are the hope that won't stop shining. Somos una luz que no cesa de iluminar. We are the light that will not go out. Caminos con fuerzas y sobre todo vidas. We are strong in our journey and strong in our lives. We demand that this board and the Sheriff's Department cease all cooperation with ICE. We demand that you join your constituents who have shown up tonight in the hundreds to stand on the side of courage, justice, and hope, as was so beautifully articulated by Luis. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 2462.
2462.
2462.
2462.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. My name is Ian M. Ciruelo. I am a member of the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance San Diego Chapter. As a resident of San Diego, I implore the San Diego Board of Supervisors to be on the side of the safety of our community and above all on human dignity. Most of those detained in the Otay Mesa Detention Center and other ICE facilities are people who have been part of our communities for so long. They have families here. Many of them have U.S. citizen spouses or children. Many of them have deep roots in our city. Subjecting them to such primitive and barbaric imprisonment are not values of a supposedly civilized society. Also, as a practicing attorney here in San Diego, I would like to remind this body that immigration proceedings are civil proceedings and not criminal proceedings. Detaining human beings for months and months for a civil deportation proceedings is simply inhumane. Yes, some of them may have been recently arrested by local police for different offenses such as DUI or theft or assault or drug use. But we have a criminal justice system that is already dealing with them. Transferring them to ICE facilities deprives them of facing and resolving the charges against them. Moreover, if a criminal court already allowed the release due to a finding that they are not a danger to the community and not a flight risk, what is the need for ICE to detain them? Truth is, ICE is able to initiate and pursue removal proceedings without detaining these individuals. More importantly, there are alternatives to detention that are easily available to ICE, such as ankle bracelets. I am here to lend my voice to the demand that our county and our city do not participate in this inhumane policy. Our law enforcement should stop cooperating with ICE. Our law enforcement should stop using state resources to support ICE enforcement actions. The practice of notifying ICE of those who are to be released from local detention should be stopped. ICE transfers should be stopped. These practices undermine public safety and further erodes communities' trust in law enforcement. San Diego should not take part in breaking families apart and the unnecessary, inhumane, prolonged detention of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9318.
9318.
9318.
9318.
Hello, hi. My name is Maria Chavez, and I am an immigration attorney here in San Diego, and I live in District 3. And I just want to say that I had the pleasure of voting against Kristen Gaspar this past election. I'm calling because I want to speak about the very real consequences that the Sheriff's Department, that their relationship with ICE has on individuals. I have 3 specific clients in mind, all of who were detained, arrested by San Diego City or a different law enforcement agency for minor offenses, one of which his offenses were dropped before he was even released from jail. The other 2 posted bond. One ended up with a wet reckless, and I believe the other one also wound up with a wet reckless. Either way, 2 of those individuals, as soon as they stepped out of the detention center, out of the jail, out of the city jail, ICE was there waiting to pick them up. Both of them refused to speak to ICE when they were in jail. But yet the Sheriff's Department still notified ICE of their release. Whether it was in one situation, a sheriff's officer directly called ICE and let them know that my client was being released. And the other one, it is unclear exactly how ICE found out about it. The individual whose charges were dropped, ICE was already in the detention center, and he was transferred directly to ICE custody from the Vista jail, despite not having any convictions, and the charge that he was arrested for was dropped. It's inhumane. It forced these individuals to worry about being separated from their families. They're now fighting deportation cases before the immigration courts. Although, yes, they were living in the United States, uncertain as undocumented immigrants, now their lives are even more uncertain because they don't know if they're going to be deported or not. One of my clients has a son who is severely autistic, and the risk that this child who relies on his father for financial support for health insurance may not have him around is inhumane. Again, we need ICE out of jails, and we need to stop transfers to ICE now. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4473.
4473.
4473.
4473.
If not, we'll go to 4550.
4550. 4550.
4550. We have one other caller who's calling from an unknown number. If you received an indication on your phone to press *6 now, that's you.
Tenemos una llamada más de un número desconocido. Si recibió una notificación, go ahead.
I'm unmuted. My name is Flower Alvarez Lopez, and I'm with the People's University and Home Me Up. I'm from San Marcos, and I live in District 5. I urge my representative, Jim Desmond, and the board to end the collaboration between San Diego Sheriff's, ICE, and other DHS agencies. Sheriff Gore talked about this relationship that he had with SDRC today. I hope moving forward, a real partnership is established between SDRC, the board, and the sheriff, not just the lip service that we heard today. I would also like to note that not only was the Otay Mesa detention facility in the headlines for COVID outbreaks, MCC, GEO, and George Bailey followed due to carelessness. These are our loved ones, and we will continue to uphold their humanity. Disenfranchised, marginalized, and immigrant communities are mobilizing and flipping districts and not just tortillas. I never thought I would see the day that we would say bye-bye to Gaspar. Mr. Desmond, the ground is shaking. We need our representatives to promote family unity and value the communities that we come from, even if they don't look or sound like theirs. Eliminate the inmate pending release report page, release our loved ones, and end transfers. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. And we have our final two callers. We'll call your numbers one more time. And if we don't hear from you, that will conclude the public testimony. So we have 4550.
Las últimas dos llamadas, si no los escuchamos, entonces concluimos con el testimonio público. Llamada para el 4550.
4550.
4550.
And 4473.
Y 4473.
Last call for 4550 and 44.
Hello?
Here we go.
Hello.
Hello.
¿Sí me escuchan?
Sí, adelante.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Javier Pérez.
Good afternoon. My name is Javier.
Y yo soy miembro de ACE.
I'm a member of ACE.
Estoy llamando para pedir al departamento de alguacil que dejen de colaborar con ICE.
I'm calling to ask that the San Diego Sheriff's Department stop collaborating with ICE.
Pues eso está ocasionando que nuestra gente de la comunidad
This is causing that our people in our communities
tenga miedo en reportar cualquier problema o dificultad.
be afraid to report any problem or difficulty.
Pues ya que uno comienza a sentir miedo y eso puede ocasionar
Since this causes fear, and that can cause
que la comunidad se sienta hostigada y con miedo.
that the community feel harassed and with fear.
Y reportar cualquier crimen
And to report any crime,
pues da miedo que tal vez pueda interferir migración.
so it scares them to report any crime because they are afraid that this could bring immigration in.
Porque ya la policía dé la información a migración y pues que uno no tiene papeles y lo puedan deportar.
Since the police could be sharing information with immigration, and if someone doesn't have documents, then they could be deported.
Bueno, eso sería todo, en mi opinión, y espero que todas esas llamadas sirvan para que hagan algo y le exijan a la policía que dejen de colaborar con el ICE.
I want to thank you for your attention, and I hope that all these calls will motivate you to do something and that the sheriff stop collaborating with ICE.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this is the final call for 4550.
Última llamada para
Unmuted.
Hello. Finally, I wasn't able to get on. My name is Judy Roselli, and I live in University City. And one of my core beliefs that all people should have a right to be protected against crime, a protection which is the duty of law enforcement. However, we confuse some jurisdictions for law enforcement. Immigration matters belong to ICE. They do not, in my opinion, fall under the jurisdiction of the Sheriff's Department. We have separate law enforcement jurisdictions in San Diego, each with their separate mandates. In order to keep them separate, the Sheriff's Department must immediately stop publishing the inmates pending release report on the Sheriff's Department's website, stop allowing ICE access to jails, stop sharing resources with DHS, and stop all transfers to ICE. Our local agencies with the Sheriff's Department should not be involved in the enforcement of immigration law. The safety and health, I believe, of all San Diegans depend upon an acceptance of these demands. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thank you. And that concludes public testimony on this item. Chairman Cox.
Thank you very much. I want to, number one, thank all of the speakers tonight for your comments and your input. I think you provided some very valuable information to myself and my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors, and obviously to the Sheriff and his department. At this point, before I get into any board discussion, let me ask if the Sheriff has any additional comments he wants to make, or responses to some of the issues raised by the speakers tonight.
Well, let me thank you, Supervisor Cox. I'd like to just start quickly by saying, as I've mentioned in my opening remarks, that I do want to form a working group with the SDIRC to look at some of these issues. I think we can come to an accommodation when it comes to the inmate pending release report. I think we can make changes there, significant changes, and deal with our who's in jail report instead. Some other demands, requests regarding limiting access of ICE to our jails are somewhat problematic. We follow the Truth Act, which specifies if they're going to interview an inmate, we provide access to that inmate. We advise the inmate he doesn't have to talk to ICE. If he wants to talk to ICE, he can do it with an attorney, or he doesn't have to have an attorney there. So we facilitate those meetings, and the majority of them say they don't want to meet with ICE, and they're not allowed into our facility. There's other issues, the transferring of inmates. I think we have to look at the California State Legislature. When they passed the Truth Act and the Values Act, they specified in the Values Act certain crimes, certain offenses, serious or violent offenses, which they felt were significant enough that had the person in our custody have a prior conviction for one of those offenses, or had a judicial finding after arrest for one of those offenses, we could cooperate, or we could honor an ICE request for notification in those cases. We are following the Values Act. They're the ones that specify what are the violations we can cooperate with ICE on. So I think there's some misunderstanding. I want to eliminate that misunderstanding. I think I'm prepared to compromise on a lot of these things, and I think we can put together a working group with my people from the IRC, and sit down and hash this out and hit 2021 with a fresh start, and hopefully something we can all agree on. And I look forward to the board's questions.
Well, thank you very much, Sheriff. I am really encouraged to hear your willingness to sit down and meet with the Immigration Rights Consortium. And I think your willingness to take a look at the inmates pending release report is absolutely a step in the right direction. That certainly seems to have raised a lot of concerns on the part of at least the commentators tonight. I do know that my colleagues have some questions or comments that they would like to make. And I'll first call on Supervisor Nathan Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start by thanking all the members of the public who called in tonight to make your voices heard. You care deeply about your communities, and you care about the level of trust and cooperation that exists between the community and law enforcement, which is vital. That is a vital component of the ability to safely police and ensure community safety, is that there is that cooperation between the community and law enforcement. And I think that is the essence of SB 54, and that is the essence of why we're here this evening. And so for everyone who took time tonight to call in to make your voices heard, I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for participating. I also want to thank Chairman Cox for partnering with me on the board letter, and my colleagues for supporting our efforts to have this in the evening. I think we saw much greater participation tonight. If it's designed to be a community forum, it ought to be held at a time when the community can weigh in and speak. And I have a couple questions and a few comments, but just to start off, I think the essence of what we're talking about is how do we ensure that trust exists? As was pointed out by multiple callers, there are federal law enforcement agencies that have the obligation to enforce federal immigration law. That is their job. That's what they do. But our local law enforcement, whether it's our sheriff or whether it's our local police departments, have the obligation to serve and protect everyone who lives here, everyone who's here. And if you are in fear of an unknown immigration status and deportation, then you run into that situation where that woman who's a victim of domestic violence may not call 911 because they don't trust that they will be there to protect them. They fear that they might be an appendage, an aid, or an assistance to federal immigration authorities, and that's the situation we're trying to avoid. That individual who witnesses a crime, we want them to feel comfortable that they can go to law enforcement and share. And that, again, is the essence of the situation we're trying to avoid. I would also point out that Dr. Tom Wong at UC San Diego did an exhaustive study that showed that sanctuary communities where we have policies like this are statistically safer. Because again, it is vital that we have that level of trust between our agencies and our communities. And I am encouraged to hear the sheriff say 2021, let's work on some of these things. Let's try to have a fresh start and let's try and move in a new direction. And I think that is encouraging because our community deserves that. And it's not just a sense of reluctant compliance with what is absolutely required, but it's a sense of fulfilling the intent behind it. And it's a sense of communicating to the community. And Sheriff, I appreciate greatly the willingness to change the jail lookup type system. And I think it's good you're going to engage with the community on that issue. I don't think the answer will be hard. I think what you'll hear is just go back to what it was, where you have the name and the information, and then you can look them up. But I do think it's right that you engage and talk to the community. But I want you to understand and appreciate the frustration that a lot of members of the community are bringing, and it's a frustration that you heard tonight. And I know that all you can do now is change that system back. But as you head into those conversations and you encounter some skepticism and some reluctance, you know, I asked about this issue a year ago at the forum when we were here, because you had a system where you had to know the name to look them up, and then the Truth Act was passed that limited the interaction, and then the system was changed to automatically, proactively disclose them all. And there's never been a valid reason that I've received on why that system was changed, other than it had the effect and impact of making it easy for ICE to just look everyone up. And that situation, we've read about the case of an individual who was arrested but not charged. But upon release, having not been charged with any crime, ICE knew where they were being released, the date, the time, and the exit, and they were waiting in the parking lot to get them because of their immigration status. And so there's going to be some skepticism. And all we can do is begin a fresh start and move in a new direction. And I think that is a positive step. But I think it is important to understand the very real and valid concerns the community has by some of the things that have happened. One question I had, and this came up last year a little bit, and I think Chairman Cox joined me in expressing some concerns, is around the issue of task force and task force participation, particularly with ICE. And I see what you reported out in the thing, but I'm just curious how many, if you can assess how many task force the Sheriff's Department jointly serves on with ICE or Border Patrol.
Yeah, Supervisor Fletcher, we serve on roughly, I think it's about 11 or 12 task forces. And when I look through the list, I think there's probably 4 or 5 of them that HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, participate on. In every task force where there is ICE participation, our memorandum of understanding make it clear that there is no immigration enforcement. You got to understand there's Homeland Security Investigations and there's DR, Detentions and Removal Officers. They're two separate entities within an ICE. And the ones we're working with our task forces are Homeland Security Investigations. We're working major narcotics, customs smuggling cases, counterterrorism investigations. They're a part of the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the Law Enforcement Coordination Center, narcotics task forces, that type of thing. And every one of those, we make it clear, and the federal government, ICE, knows our position here in California. No immigration enforcement is done in those task forces, and the MOUs state that. And I think to throw the task force out, one of our strengths in this county, and why I think we have record low crime rates and the envy of basically the rest of the country, is we do participate in task forces. We do regionalize crime problems, so we're not duplicating efforts and reinventing the wheel. I know that's problematic when it comes to immigration, and that's why we have specifically articulated no immigration enforcement in any of those task forces. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Those task forces do amazing work every day to keep San Diego County safe.
Yeah, and I think you know this, Sheriff, but I think again the concern is just the broader effort around the job of local law enforcement and the job of federal immigration officials, and ensuring that clear line exists, and ensuring that the community knows that clear line exists. And,
you know,
and I think that's
Supervisor Fletcher, when you talked about, it was like giving my Rotary speech. I go out and talk to groups like you do, and I try to explain to them why law enforcement shouldn't be enforcing, our deputies on the street and local law shouldn't be enforcing immigration law. It makes us all less safe when somebody's afraid to be a witness to crime, to be, to report crimes or be a witness, or to report being a victim. On the other hand, as we know, in my jails, that's a horse of a different color, if you will. And the state recognized that through the Trust Act and the Values Act, that there are areas where a sheriff in California can cooperate with ICE. Now, I can see where our release information is problematic, and we're going to address that. And I think we can do it with the community.
And again, I think that change, like that's a perfect example, Sheriff, of the change that's not covered by the letter of the law in SB 54, but it is the signal that gets sent to the community. And I think that is important. Another issue that comes up a lot, I hear from the community a lot, was earlier in the year, ICE subpoenaed your information for individuals who were in sheriff's custody. And I believe that, those subpoenas, and again, it was a subpoena, and I understand the nature of that, but I think that certainly violated the spirit of SB 54. Other jurisdictions fought that a little bit. Was there an internal discussion about do we fight that, and do we go out and say we give you what we have to give you under SB 54? We don't think we have to give you this, and let a court decide if you actually have to turn that over or not?
My understanding is some other jurisdictions, I think Denver for one, did fight it, and they lost in court. It's a legal federal court order, subpoena. And I don't choose and pick which orders, federal, authorized judicial warrants, do I honor and which ones I don't. I decided I'm not going to fight it. I think it was a legal order. It wasn't a request from an ICE officer to detain somebody past their release date. It was a court order. Like if they come into my facilities with a federal warrant asking for us to turn over that individual or hold that individual for ICE, I honor those warrants, and the state law recognizes we will honor those warrants.
And again, it's just one of those things, Sheriff, where again, it's a signal to the community, and Denver might have lost. Now, Denver didn't have state law, and I understand state law contradicts federal. I get all of that. But again, it is important when we're talking about building trust. It is showing a community that the aim and intention is not to just go out of your way, to accommodate ICE. It is to recognize the needs of the community. And those are the types of things that I think are important. Two more quick questions. I fully understand you can only transfer under certain circumstances that are outlined under SB 54, and I understand what those crimes and offenses are. For some of them, the qualifying charge, the timing of that is critical for determining whether the transfer was allowed by law. And it hasn't been shared the dates of the qualifying charges of those who are being transferred. And without knowing the dates of the offenses, the community can't know with absolute certainty whether the transfers are completely consistent with the law. And so I'm curious if you would be willing to provide the dates on those qualifying charges to just provide greater clarity and certainty to the community.
Yes, Supervisor, we met with the SDIRC and we provided them a lot of, and this was just a recent request. And to be honest, we're researching it now to see that we can legally do that. There's certain criminal history information we cannot release, and we're researching that now. And if we can legally do it, I have no problem with that.
Okay, I think that would be a good positive step forward. Another positive step along with the changes to inmate lookup, and hopefully continued efforts to really scrutinize task force participation, not just in the substance of what it is, but in the signals it sends. My last question, a little bit of a comment, but I'm going to allow you to respond to it. During the protest that we saw in June following the death of George Floyd, there was obviously a rigorous debate about appropriateness of response and use of force, and a lot of those discussions continue. And I was concerned, and I sent you a letter, and I appreciate the response about our engagement with Border Patrol. And in your response back, you said that the Border Patrol agents were needed and necessary not to serve in an enforcement capacity in response to the protests, but in a general support role. But Sheriff, I want you to again, understand and appreciate from the community's perspective that when the chief of the Border Patrol tweets out and pushes a photo of Border Patrol officers in tactical gear standing on the steps of the County Administration Center, standing over the memorial that had been set up in tactical gear, the signal that sends to the community at a time like why is Border Patrol standing on the steps of the county building in the immediate aftermath of a protest if they're not there to have that thing? And I would just urge you to please consider the signals that things like this send and the way that this is perceived. And I know that you didn't take the picture and you didn't send it out, but Border Patrol did. And they're standing on the steps of our county building at a time when we're telling the community that that's not their job. That here's what local law enforcement does and here's what federal law enforcement does. And I just think as we move forward, I think particularly in issues of protest and those types of things, having militarized Border Patrol agents standing on the steps of the county building sends devastating signals that you have to bear the impact and implications of the trust that gets broken when those types of actions happen. And I would just urge to please, and again, I get that doesn't violate the letter of the law in SB 54, but it certainly undermines trust.
Well, as you understand, so those are extraordinary times. We had a terrible demonstration on the May 30th in La Mesa, which got completely out of hand. Banks were burned to the ground, buildings and offices were looted. We were truthfully just outmanned. And when it came, we were concerned the next night as demonstrations started downtown, we didn't have the resources. Border Patrol offered, we asked for their assistance, they offered it. We clearly in our request made sure that there was no enforcement activity on their part. They were there for force protection of the County Administrative Center, the courthouse, and on the 31st, some buildings in La Mesa that some rioters had tried to burn down the night before. And then several weeks later, we used them for force protection again in Santee. I'm aware of that image. The same image was created, and I talked at length with the community back in 2007 when we had the wildfires, and we used Border Patrol to secure some of our neighborhoods here from looters, and when we had the mass evacuation. I needed all the resources I could get back then in 2007 during those fires, and I needed that same help to try to keep the loss of life and property during those civil protests, most of which were peaceful, and some which we clearly saw were not. I'm aware of the perception, but to do it all over again, I'm not sure I'd make a different decision. It would depend on, hopefully we could have enough local law enforcement resources. We wouldn't have to do that, but we were stretched pretty thin during those days of unrest back then.
All right, I think there's probably a lot of federal resources to draw from, but this is the one that draws the most attention and focus. And I think when we talk about extraordinary times, it is extraordinary in the sense of we've seen 4 years of, and more than 4 years of very targeted efforts to rip apart families. Right now, we have children that their parents are lost. We don't know where they went. And it is an extraordinary time in that sense, and the level of fear that communities feel in a broken immigration system and going about their lives, and the fear that people fear just going to work, a job that they have had and paid taxes on for many decades, and the fear that people fear in going to pick their kids up from school and going around. And so I think in those extraordinary times, it is going to take a significant step for us to build that trust again between the communities. And it is just indescribably damaging to that trust when folks see images like that. And I think anything that we can do as a county to change substantively policies, but also to be aware of the signals that get sent and the impact that that has, and how that really touches a nerve at a time when the whole point of this was to really build trust. And I think that there's a lot more we can do. I will take it your word, 2021, we want to have a fresh start. And I think some of these are issues that we can work on and we need to work on. And we need to figure out how we can really fulfill not just what is the actual requirement, but how do we fulfill the intent of it? And in the absence of that, it's just simply inviting more legislation, which at times may be necessary. But I think if we can show that we're complying with the intent of it, we can go a long way as a community. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Supervisor. Other questions or comments from my colleagues?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a couple of comments. I listened intently to the speakers, and I understand the issue of trust. I mean, we need trust, not just in the situation we're talking about here, but we need trust in our relationships, in our personal lives, and in the county system, all the way around. Trust is really essential to everything that we do. I want to applaud Sheriff Gore for speaking up, being honest, straightforward, and his willingness to work on this issue into the future. At the same time, not to sacrifice the core mission of what law enforcement is supposed to be doing, or what we, the people, expect of the sheriff and the deputies, of the men and women of the Sheriff's Department and all of law enforcement for that matter, and that's to protect and serve. It's number one. People want to feel safe in their communities. All people want to feel safe in their communities. And believe me, I know, because in my district, we work very, very closely with the Sheriff's Department to make sure that law enforcement has the resources in order to keep and make our neighborhoods safe. And it's a tough job. There's a clear, distinct role of the Sheriff's Department. There's a clear, distinct role of immigration officials. At the same time, I've seen many issues where it demands a high level of cooperation. And just last Friday, we announced the annual report card on the meth task force. And we've had a report card every year for many, many years. And it's something I started 1996, believe it or not. And unfortunately, the news this year is worse. But I can tell you that the high level of cooperation, and without question, whether it was someone from the federal government, state, or local working together, all said, we are in San Diego County a model for cooperation when it comes to these kinds of problems. And we've got a big problem with meth coming across the border, a problem with other drugs coming across the border, and that combined task force that works on these kinds of issues are very, very important. And I applaud the efforts of all. I know it's a tough job to be a law enforcement officer in this day and age. At the same time, yeah, there's some mistakes made, but I don't want us to overshadow the incidents that have caused the riots and all of the concerns, to overshadow the main purpose here. And that is public safety. It is public safety. And also, though, to distinguish between the roles of law enforcement officers and the immigration officials. I believe in the rule of law. I think I would venture out to say that I believe we all believe in the rule of law on the Board of Supervisors, including the sheriff, or we wouldn't be in the positions where we are in right now. But sometimes that becomes difficult, and there are some areas that are just not black and white anymore. So I'm hope going into next year that there can be some of these issues that were brought up can be resolved, but not at the expense of public safety. To me, that is the underlying issue and the most important issue as we deal with some of these other issues. So I thank you, Sheriff, for stepping up tonight and sticking with it for the last 3 hours or so. And I appreciate, Supervisor Fletcher, I appreciate your comments, and I understand you have a little different constituency than I do, but we're all in this together. Regardless of our districts, our constituencies, we are all in this together, and we want to make this county a better place. And I think the underlying theme that you had indicated is trust. And I hope that that's one thing that come out of this. So thank you all.
Thanks, Supervisor.
Are there other comments from other board members? I'll offer up a few comments. Again, I want to thank all the speakers tonight for calling in. Obviously, we had tremendous participation. And in the past, there had been requests to hold this forum in the evening, and I was glad to see that we were able to accommodate those requests and to see so many people respond by calling in tonight to express their opinions and their thoughts. I do want to recognize and thank my colleagues for your willingness to agree to hold this evening meeting. But I also want to thank our Chief Administrative Officer, the Clerk of the Board, and county staff that works to organize and broadcast these meetings. It's a major task, and I know it's been a long day for everyone. The board started meeting at 9 o'clock this morning, and looks like maybe we'll get done by 9 o'clock tonight. And I want to recognize the dedication of our staff and their professionalism for assisting the speakers and making sure everybody had their opportunity to get their opinions across. Lastly, I want to thank the men and women of our Sheriff's Department and Sheriff Gore for your leadership. They, along with other local law enforcement, have just a tremendously difficult job ensuring the public safety and certainly balancing that main priority with ever-changing laws that come out of Sacramento. Our Sheriff, Bill Gore, has been very clear in the past, and I think has reemphasized it again tonight, saying that his department is not responsible for enforcing federal immigration laws. In this day of some community mistrust of law enforcement, it's critically important to maintain that trust and cooperation of all sectors of our community. And I believe that policy is a good one, and it's one that we need to continue to emphasize and certainly enforce. I am particularly encouraged tonight, Sheriff, by your willingness to sit down with the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium and to really do a deep dive in regards to the inmates' pending release report. I think that seems to be a major point of concern on the part of a lot of speakers tonight. And I think your willingness to sit down and see what can be done to accommodate those concerns is a credit to you and to the County of San Diego. I don't know how quickly you can get those meetings set up, but I would hope that it's sooner rather than later. You indicated you want to have a kind of a fresh start in 2021, and I would encourage you to set up those meetings as soon as you possibly can. But thank you for your report tonight, Sheriff. I really sincerely appreciate it.
Trust me, it'll be soon.
Okay.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Yes, Supervisor Vice Chairman Desmond, and I know Kristen Gaspar wants to speak also. So Vice Chairman, why don't you go ahead and go next?
Well, I just want to say thank you to all the callers that called in. Thank you for the sheriffs and for all the hard work that they do. And certainly we want all of our citizens and all of our communities to feel safe and also feel safe in reporting crimes. So I appreciate all the efforts by the callers and our sheriff tonight. And thanks everybody for calling in.
Very good. Supervisor Gaspar.
Thank you. I appreciate all the speakers tonight. Thank you to my colleagues, your comments as well. The trouble with politics is sometimes that pendulum just has a way of swinging completely one way or the other, and it never lands in the middle. And the intent behind SB 54 to make people feel comfortable in their communities, people that are going about their lives, they're trying to make a living for themselves, their family, and this sentiment that they shouldn't live in fear. They should feel as though they can report crimes as they see them, abuse, whatever it might be. All of that is valid. And the problem is that with every piece of legislation, it's not perfect. And what we found in SB 54 is actually not that Border Patrol is not going to pursue individuals who are creating harm on a community. They are going to pursue them. And oftentimes when they do, it's back out in the community. So what you see is actually an increased presence of Border Patrol out in the communities. And that's the opposite of what I've heard people wanted to see out of this piece of legislation. Again, it's not perfect. Pendulum swinging the other way. And things that keep me up at night. I want to share with you an experience where I held the body of a 26-year-old that was shot in cold blood, holding the ashes of this family member in my hands in a bag at their home. It's completely unacceptable that a San Diegan should, their life should be cut short that way, that our family should be suffering that way. That's the other side of this pendulum swing that people don't want to look at, and it can't be ignored. And I think it's really important as we move forward in 2021. Sheriff Gore, I have the utmost respect for you, and I know that your intent is pure, that you care deeply about our community, you care about the people here in San Diego, and I know you always follow your heart, and I know that you do what's right. In all of these conversations, we have to think about how do we get to that middle ground? How do we get to where that pendulum lands in the middle? Because on both sides, people are really suffering, and we have to stand up for both sides in all of this. So I know that there are tasks ahead in 2021, but please don't forget the suffering that often goes unnoticed. And something that's so powerful about being in elected office is being able to see outside the walls sometimes of the chamber that you sit in or the Zoom that you sit in, and recognize that there are people that are suffering on either side, and you have to recognize that, and you have to take it into consideration. That's how you truly recognize and meet the needs of a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gaspar. Again, we want to thank the sheriff. We're very proud of the fact that we are one of the safest urban counties in America, and that's a credit to the sheriff's department, our local law enforcement agency, and the great job that they do. But we also know that there's some concerns that have been raised tonight that I think by working together we can come up with some good solutions that will hopefully at least meet some of the concerns that have been raised tonight. This concludes our Truth Forum for this year. We want to thank everybody again for your participation. The Board of Supervisors will be meeting again starting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for our regular land use hearing on November 18th. We thank you for your participation, and let me ask the clerk once again if there's anything else we need to cover before we adjourn for the evening.
We do not, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, well, again, we thank you very much, and we will stand adjourned until 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning.